Friends, if you're looking for real old school laughs, you're in for a treat because we've got them right here. Flip City Magazine. Remember Mad Magazine? Then it went woke? Well, don't worry. Flip City has no chance of going woke. That's right. 4 times a year, you'll get an actual printed magazine full of jokes, stories, comics, and more, all about today's pop culture, entertainment, and woke politics. Flip City takes terrible entertainment trends we love to hate with hilarious parodies of Lord of the Rings, Stranger Things, The Walking Dead, Star Trek, Hunters, and more. Trust me when I say there is nothing else like Flip City on the market. So subscribe today. It will be delivered in print, or you can even get it digitally if you're one of those wacky Zoomers. Either way, follow our link and sign up today, and if you put in midnight, you get an extra 10% off. Check out Flip City Magazine today. Good morning once again, and welcome to Midnight's Edge in the morning. It is Monday. Welcome to the program. We have Andre with us this morning. How you doing?
Greetings, everyone. I'm happy and excited to be here, especially today, as I, once in a rare moon, isn't the only Norwegian on the panel. I'm not the only Norwegian.
This is a rarity, but yeah. Yes. So we have with us your fellow countryman, Arch. How are you doing?
Hello.
Arch. I'm sorry. It's Arch.
For having me.
Like Arch, right?
Oh, Arch. Arch works.
Arch. See, now I've screwed it up. I
had it right the first time.
Had it right my first time, and then I second guessed myself. How you doing? Been a few days or so since we've seen you last, but yes.
It's been good. It's been good.
Glad to have you here this morning. And we also have with us Culture Casino, who forced me into pigtails last night.
Hey, you looked great. And I'm telling you right now that you could be the new spokeswoman for Wendy's. So you should just apply.
My audition was for Pippi Longstocking, but okay.
Oh, all right. Well, you looked like Wendy. But okay.
That's the gap now. Like nobody remembers Pippi Longstocking.
I do.
Well, to be fair, Wendy's and Pippi Longstockings look like distant cousins from across the Atlantic.
Pretty much. But yeah, no, we had fun on that, on your celebration stream, I guess.
Yeah, it was a good time. Lots of fun last night. If you want to see me at my most embarrassed, check out last night's pigtail stream. I was supposed to have many other people join me, but I did not know who they were. So I couldn't have reached out to them. I would have liked to have had them all. So
as long as they didn't come from Vault 32.
Yeah, wow. It doesn't look good. 32 doesn't look good.
No.
And that, of course, is the one, the only Canadian on the panel thus far, Mr. Paul Chato. How you doing?
Nice to be here, and nice to be with Arc again, or De Triomphe. I guess, is that your last name, De Triomphe?
It could be. It sounds adequately pretentious.
Well, that's the picture that I'm looking at, isn't it? Your icon, your avatar.
My triumphal arch, yes.
See, there you go. Yes, I'm very good. It's Monday and it's sunny here, and I've got lots of writing to do.
Yeah, join the club. It's also sunny here outside the coast of Africa, and it's very, very warm. We're getting to summer, so I kind of wish I was back in Norway right now. But you don't see it, but I'm boiling in the sun, and my redness from the sunburn is gradually going away. So yeah.
Well, we have in Canada what we call snowbirds, people who go from Quebec or Southern Ontario to Florida for the winter and then come back up here for the summer. You could do that. You could go back to. Can't you go back to Norway for the summer?
Problem. I may. Problem is to say
you've been kind of talking
summer
about
too, so it's not going to help much.
Well, we were 2 years ago. We were crossing Canada in our RV, and it was a super hot summer in Texas, so hot that we met an awful lot of Texans and Southern Americans, not South Americans, but Americans from the South who had RVs, who scooted up to Saskatchewan and Manitoba just to get out of the heat because they could. It was so insane that they just didn't want to stay at home.
Yeah, I don't blame them. But speaking of staying at home, how many people stayed at home this weekend, and how many went to the box office? And what did they see there? Was there any movies that stood out?
Well,
for worse.
We did have a bit of a, I guess, a success, you could call it, because it wasn't a sequel, prequel, remake, or reboot. And it did open at number 1. It did modestly well. We do have at least 1 or 2 people, I think, on the panel have seen it, one for sure. And that would be Culture Casino.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is the Civil War film that knocked Kong and Godzilla off the top spot, surprisingly. So yeah, we'll get into that in just a moment. But another thing I'm noticing there is Ghostbusters is kind of hanging on. Staying in the 3rd spot, while Kung Fu Panda and Dune all fell off. Now Dune, I believe, is on video on demand this week. I think it's already. So yeah, so that's probably another reason why that's gone down a bit. The First Omen fell like a friggin' sinking rock. Look at that.
Yeah. I didn't think that movie was going to do very well. I think a lot of those have lost their appeal. You can only make multiple swings at the same franchise and fail multiple times, and then you just kind of need to bury it. This is one of the times when I would just say bury this thing. It's done.
Yeah. But I know, like, Mr. H and a few other people have said that The First Omen was actually surprisingly good. I don't know if anybody here on the panel has seen it, but
I don't see horror movies. It scares me.
It's kind of a strange for a horror movie to fall off like that, though, that quickly. Because that's like DOA now.
If you look at the bar in percentage, it's actually not doing too bad. It's a 55% drop. It only seems that bad because the opening weekend number we're used to like box office smashes and stuff, and the First Omen wasn't that. So just for how poorly it opened, relatively speaking, and it's not actually doing all that badly. Like 55%, that's a fairly average hold, especially for a movie that didn't open too big in the first place. They shouldn't. I mean, they shouldn't pop the champagne over that, to be sure, but there's nothing to cry about either. If anything, should cry about the opening weekend.
True. Paulie says everyone should go see The Long Game. Now that looks like that movie that came in 8th spot there, from Mucho Mas Media. So our very own Paulie from Midnight's Edge Espanol and Latino Slant says check that one out. It looks like it's in pretty limited release, but not uber limited release.
Yeah. Paulie has excellent taste in movies, so I trust his recommendation. I will.
I saw his post. He was squeezing an actress.
Oh, really?
In a nice way. Nothing.
Oh, well, okay. That makes a big difference. Big difference.
Well, he has close connections with many actresses. Let's put it this way. One in particular.
Monkey Man, though, did kind of fall off a little worse than The First Omen there, but not too shabby. But did anybody here see that one? Did you go to that one, Culture?
No, I was going to, and then once I'd heard just how bad it was, I noped out. I have too much media to consume. I would rather consume.
That's my issue too.
Yeah, I want to consume the things that have a chance of being good, which is why I'm so enthralled with the beginning episodes of Fallout. So
yeah, and I watched The Masters. So between Fallout and The Masters, that was it for me.
You got a lot of naps in with The Masters. A lot of naps.
Paul and Culture and Andre have been watching that, so we might talk about the Fallout here in a little bit, it sounds like. But while we're on the topic of movies, though, so Culture, you did see the Civil War movie, though.
I did, yeah.
So and you're the only one so far on the panel, I believe, that did. So
look, a quick recap. It's pointless. There's no plot. The through line is basically a group of journalists, supposedly journalists, get together and try to get to DC before the fall of the Capitol. There you go. That's the film. There's no plot. There's no reason to care about the characters. They don't provide you any reason. They only have one like human moment there. Of course, you know, attrition takes place during the course of the film. These are not really spoilers. They've been seen in the trailer. But, you know, when somebody is no longer alive, that doesn't have an impact on you. The things that have an impact on you are, you know, what you expect from Alex Garland, which is just a visual impact of these war moments. This thing is, as I said in my review, if you check that out, it's on my channel, but it's a love letter to you know, ward correspondents, to urinalists that engage in that practice. It was so silly. They even had regular film cameras being utilized in the film alongside digital cameras, and somehow they're filing their stories. Maybe they have internet, maybe they don't. Why they would still have internet's hard to say. There's so much nonsense in the film from beginning to end. Kirsten Dunst just looks like she's constipated for the whole film. And I'm not casting, you know, negativity towards her. I'm sure she was told to act that way, but it's just like none of the only time you see.
She's never been my favorite actress either, so that's not like.
Well, but anytime
bring it on.
No, but anytime they're asked for an emotional performance, it doesn't land. It's
stoic. She was doing the stoic.
Yeah, she was very masculine in her stoicism. But that's again, if she's told to act that way, you can't go after her for that. She delivered whatever performance the director wanted. Alex Garland is not a great director. He's good at a few things. The soundtrack in the film was fantastic. The moments that were chosen for the individual scenes to convey any kind of emotion you might feel for this film was brought about by music, not by the characters. And even the horrific circumstances that are presented and actions that you get to witness, you don't feel anything about. The powerful stuff is the visual and the audio. There's not a good story. There's very little character development, and it just, you know, once you get to the last act, you're like, when is this ending?
See, and it almost sounds like they played themselves too safe.
Well, there's no politics.
That's what I'm saying, and that's just my observation from what you're saying, is like they tried to stay on that line so much, so they wouldn't.
But there's no motivations.
But at the expense of the film itself, basically, is what I was getting to. Yeah.
No, you're right. But see, that's the problem, Tom. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. They avoided conflict to explain the conflict. I'm like, so we don't know what any of this is or why any of it happened. I sat there thinking, did I fall asleep at some point in this film? Because it's very disjointed. Let's just be, you know, up front here. But it's like, I'm missing the plot. Did we find out why this is happening? Did anybody explain this? How many years are we removed from today? You know, is this an America that you are, you know, telling us that you want with predictive garbage? Or is this a warning to everybody that this is where you're headed? And if so, what caused these steps along the way to get where we are? Is it 15 years from now? Is it 30 years from now? Is it 5 years from? Is it today? Is it tomorrow? It's just there is nothing there to explain the situation you're in. And again, I go to films to escape. I escaped from politics on this one. The only thing that was even remotely close to woke or intersectional, of course, is obviously the woman leading the thing, and, you know, a very diverse cast, which played no, it didn't matter. Everything about this felt hollow. And there's no emotional payoff. You don't, at the end of the film, at the climax, you don't feel anything. It really did create. It's really one of the most dispassionate presentations of war that you've ever seen. If you want to experience an impactful war film, see Saving Private Ryan or something like that. The horrors of war exist there. The emotions of the situation exist there. None of that exists in this film.
Well, was there anything that anything that spoke to the division among Americans across partisan lines, something that artificially has been induced, enhanced, and aggravated over the past decade and half a decade in particular. Was there any kind of messaging there? So granted, so clearly, this is no Sound of Freedom. That's obvious.
No.
Was there any kind of messaging? Was there any kind of subtext suggesting that we're all one people and we need to get along here? Or what's the message? We need to divorce and never speak again.
Well, there wasn't any unifying message, Andre. That's what I'm saying is when you look at the states they decided to pair up, that's not explained. How in the world would California and Texas decide to, get busy with it?
I think why that was done on purpose to allay the obvious division.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really easy to basically have the center of the country fighting the coasts. That seems like the most likely outcome, to be fair.
California and Austin fighting the rest of the country.
Well, and of course, obviously the East Coast as well. But you've got that thing. And again, I guess Alex probably went into this thinking, I'm going to try to remove today's politics from this conversation. But by doing that, and honestly, Andre, if there was an overriding message, if there was something that you were supposed to learn that isn't overtly said in the film itself by Kristen Dunst's character, who said, I thought I was sending a warning, don't do this, every time I went to another country to shoot the images that I shoot. She says that in the film. That's obviously parenthetical, but she says that during the course of the film. And I don't know.
That seems very simplified and stupid, if I'm completely honest. It was you saw the pictures I sent, so why are we doing this? That's kind of that's kind of ignoring the underlying forces and tensions that lead to war in the first place. Which is very disappointing because, again, I haven't seen the movie, but Garland traditionally is a very good storyteller, and he seems to have dropped the ball on this one.
Well, there's no story. It's by the time you get to that point in the movie, you're about halfway through when she's saying that line, and you're just like, no kidding, there's nothing there. I don't know how else to say it, because when you're watching it, you're waiting for something. There was some reason why we're here, or why we would care about anybody. Alex wants you to care about the journalists. He wants you to care about these people that are covering this, but he doesn't give you any reason. There's only one human moment that Kristen Dunst does, and it's in a dress shop in a town that's ignoring the war. Except that they're really not. They have snipers on top of all the buildings in this area, but for the most part, they're not engaged in it. They're conducting commerce. The kids are going to school. People are walking their dogs, right in the middle of, this huge conflict.
And why are they at war with each other?
Hey, you know what? If you can find that out for me, Paul, I would appreciate that, because it's not in the movie. Nothing's in the movie.
Maybe he backed off. I mean, it's called Civil War. If it's alluding to your original Civil War, then there was a lot of stakes. There were many things. I mean, obviously there was several, and one that they like to make the most present in our zeitgeist is slavery. But that's not what the war was about. It was an economic war, and it was a right to be governed by locally rather than nationally. So there's a lot of elements to that, and historians will tell you that. But when you look at this film, it doesn't have any of those catalysts. There's nothing. There's nothing. There's no mention of anything incendiary that led to the fracturing. Maybe they're trying to allude to the fact that it's part of what we have today. But this is A24's most expensive film. They spent more on this film than any other film they've ever produced. It cost $50 million. They've already kind of defrayed some of those costs because they've sold it to foreign markets. So this has been much like, other better studios used to do. They would sell their film off in other places and already have recovered the budget. So my guess is
this $25 million take after this weekend, and after all of us that have seen it saying this film there's nothing to it. If this thing's going to drop like a rock next weekend,
maybe it was just too difficult to come up with something as clear as. Do you remember the movie Red Scare?
Yeah.
So that's a trope. You had the
how about Red Dawn?
I've seen this compared to Red Dawn and China Syndrome, but
Red Dawn is, you look at it, I understand. We know the sides here, we know the politics here, we know and then a brief breakdown of what those actions were. Yeah, we know all those
China
things.
Syndrome is a very left-wing movie if you watch it now.
Sure.
You have sides. It's clear the sides, and it's clear what the production is trying to promote. I mean,
sure.
It's all.
You know what, Paul? I will say this about classic films and I've noticed that a lot lately in some of the movies I've been watching about. Oh yeah, these definitely have like a lighter or a right or a left leaning kind of thing going on. But at least then they didn't treat one side usually like complete monsters outside of sans like communism and stuff like that. Let's say, because like other times it's usually like. It's still set up in a way kind of like how this movie sounds, is that like, eventually we got to figure out how to work together anyway and really realize who the real enemies are. But I haven't seen the movie, so I can't speak to that. But I have noticed that, yeah, there's stuff in the past. They were able to do it a lot more nuanced, I guess is the word I'm looking for. The more obvious ones were things like Dirty Harry and Death Wish, which were kind of wearing it on their sleeves.
That's what's so disappointing here, because Garland is generally a very nuanced storyteller and filmmaker, and he even knows exactly what Dirty Harry is all about. So very disappointing to hear what you're saying here, and I will be checking the movie out because I do believe I need to see it for myself.
Yeah.
Not everything can be good. You give it your best shot, and
and everything he's ever done, I've always thought this is pretty, and the use of music in this is the thing I can praise, because between the soundtrack and the sound design and everything that went into making this thing have that impact it does, it does very well what Godzilla -1 did, which is utilize the absence of sound in a way that is compelling.
Yeah. Let's hear what the audience is saying. ActionCom wonders, Cultured, how would you compare the movie War with the movies Apocalypse Now and On the Beach?
It's not even close. This thing doesn't even rise to like Pee-wee's Big Top Adventure. This is not a war movie that's going to have the kind of impact. I mean, there's only a few moments of visuals that you can appreciate. You care about what's happening in those other two films, and again, there are much better films out there. So I'm not even sure this is a war movie per se.
I think he meant the movie Civil War with Apocalypse Now, and which I would imagine.
Yeah. Oh no, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
So Civil War is certainly not up to snuff when it comes to war pictures. I mean, shoot, go watch an old John Wayne war movie. You'll be a lot happier.
Yeah. And ActionCom also wonders, did you ever see HBO's The Second Civil War? Both movies are about journalists. How would you compare that movie?
I didn't get to see HBO's Second Civil War, so I have no frame of reference for that. But again, trying to make it seem like journalists are interesting and we should pay attention to them, it comes at the wrong time. I don't know if Garland realizes that less than 3 in 10 Americans have any level of trust in journalists nowadays.
Maybe that's why it's being done. It's propaganda. But somebody else has a different opinion on the film who has seen it, and he was in the chat, so I told him to come on in. Paulie, how you doing?
Hey. Good morning. Can you guys hear me? Can I be heard?
Yes.
What's going on?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, Paulie.
Hey, what's up, Jefe? What's up, Chato?
Good.
And Arch.
Hello.
Hello, Arch. Yeah, what's going on? Midnight's Edge, Mondays. What's happening, chat? ¿Qué pasó?
Well, just talking some movies, and I think that you've seen a couple of movies as well. So,
I mean,
let's hear your reviews before we get into all things Warhammer here.
Sure. Let me just hit this positive really quickly. I want everyone to pay in the chat. Pay attention to number 8. It's called The Long Game. It is a golf sports drama. It is fantastic. Dennis Quaid, Jay Hernandez, great cast. They did it for nothing. They got distribution. You see right there, it's only in 1,030 theaters. Look at its per screen average. Wow. $1,350. That's on par with Monkey Man, and Monkey Man is in over what 3,000. So 3 times,
right?
3 times. Family, great lessons, sports, all that good stuff.
Is it wide?
Say it again.
Did it make wide release? Oh, I guess technically it's over 1,000. So
technically, it's barely wide, but it's truly a independent. Kind of like mucho mass media. I think they got together with Lionsgate to help them out on the distribution, but this was made for peanuts. The director Julio Quintana has done some other exquisite work, but this he knocked it out. It's a true story set in the 50s in Texas of a group of Mexican American high schoolers that become golfers, and they win. It's a true. Well, I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but very, very, very entertaining.
And Cheech is in it, right?
Cheech is in it. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Yeah, there's he plays a fantastic role where he's kind of like this really kooky groundsman to kind of like what he did in Tin Cup, but a lot older. He's a World War I veteran, and that's a whole nother thing with this film is that all the main characters are war veterans, and they use golf to also too. It's kind of done very lightly, but it's there. They use golf to rehabilitate themselves because it's in the 50s. There's not that conscious type of counseling back in the day.
I love the premise.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I think Paul, you'd really like it. I think anyone would really like it. And Marisa Sanchez, no thanks to watching a group of non-white people being so brave as to play a sport. Big deal. I'm over cheering for people taking over our culture. Okay, well, that's definitely a divisive take. I would say to you, Marisa, and thanks for the comment. I would say to you, Marisa, watch the film with an open mind and open heart. It's a true story. First of all, it happened, and
exactly, it happened. So then approach it with that.
Right, and there's no race swapping, gender swapping. In fact, it's one of the female character. Her big thing is that she wants to be a mother. She wants to be pregnant, and she prays for that. When do you see that in films?
Exactly. So there's obviously something brilliant about it. Do check it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Lee Trevino, you could make a movie about him, and it would be compelling. I'm surprised that there's no biopic on Lee Trevino.
Well, it's Del Rio, Texas. In Texas are huge golfers, no matter what your color. And this was just at a time in 55 to 57 where even World War II veterans, as Jay Hernandez's character, wasn't allowed to join the country club. And he loved golf. And and there's lessons here on how you deal with discrimination. It's fantastic. And yet it's about these kids, who are underdogs.
They love golf.
And golf. Yeah, it's beautifully shot. So
that 50s story has played across North America with all sorts of subgroups who were not led into the main group. There's lots of stories like that, and this sounds great.
Yeah, one more. Cameron James, divisive. Someone called Latino Slant is now pretending neutrality. I don't think you watch my channel and watch everything that I cover. I cover everything.
Why are people coming after you, Paul?
Yeah, that's okay. That's all. I think because of this divisive nature of anything right now,
I think so too, because I'm just going to say there's nothing divisive about Latinos Land whatsoever. Quite the contrary, that's one of the most uniting channels out there, only emphasizing all the good stuff coming from Latino talent and Latino cast out there, which is otherwise overlooked. Absolutely nothing divisive about it whatsoever.
But Cameron,
so Paulie, thanks for what
Yes.
you're doing, and thanks for the recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think because of the channel that we pay attention to a lot of smaller films, and I think that our anti-woke lens is so strong nowadays, as it should be. We tend to miss the smaller hits, and that's what we do. I'll consistently spotlight Latino achievement in the business. It's very important because I don't want the Hollywood Hispanic hypocrisy to continue, and that's just it. There's it's a big table for everyone, as what we're gonna get into with Civil War with this culture casino right here.
Yeah,
I watch movies every day.
We're about to actually leave Civil War for now until more people have seen it. I'm just going to conclude with the remaining super chats related to that before we move into all things Warhammer here. I saw there were a couple of more super chats pertaining to it. So I'm just going to find them. Packing Protons said on the box office, Ghostbusters seems to be having some staying power. Is 36% drop for week 3 decent?
Depends on the film. Like you have to look at it from a perspective of this movie it only cost $75 million to make, or somewhere between 75 and 90 from what we had seen reported. It probably has a Netflix deal going into it. Probably has a bunch of foreign deals going into it. I think their goal was to hit at least 200 million total, or at least more than what they made with the last one. So I think at least that's the rumor I keep hearing, is if it just sticks in there and it gets over that 200 million worldwide mark, that is good news for a sequel possibility. But I mean, just considering what it opened up against, if Sony is considering that, considering it's staying at number 3, yeah, that's not bad for that movie at all.
Yeah. And what I was saying, at 36% in isolation is a decent hold. The problem is that it started at such a low level at the absolute box office. It went up against some very stiff competition. So it opened at too low a level. Then it got squashed in week 2. 36% is good for week 3. Problem is the numbers haven't been big enough leading up to that. And then let's see if there's anything else here. David March says on Civil War, the trigger is the president doesn't leave office and starts the war. He's a dictator. Agree, the characters are thin.
Yeah, I wonder what.
Let's see what happens later this year. So I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, in regards to Ghostbusters, Kung Fu Panda, Dune, they're all showing, legs. Some are mighty, some are small, but people are going back to Ghostbusters. Families, a lot of families that on the couple of times that I went, love Ghostbusters, hooked into it. Same with Godzilla. So that's you're seeing that staying power there.
I think they're just leaving them in theaters longer because there's nothing else to have in theaters, and that's giving them legs. I mean, remember, and Paulie, you can even recall when we were looking at films in theaters for 3 months. I mean, that wasn't uncommon.
Yeah.
That used to be the case. Yeah. And, and the opposite of that is that Monkey Man and Omen are falling fast.
Yeah. And Horseradish Power says for £2, states had color Rev. Is that red, you mean? And they went for federal government. So I guess that makes sense to those that have seen the movie. Thanks for the super chat. Copper India says for $10, I think Cultured Casino is right. The whole story seems to be a contradiction. The whole motivation for any of it, characters, factions, etc., is lost in the narrative trying to not appear political.
Yeah, indeed.
So, yeah, I really disagree with a lot that Culture brought up with the film. But here's the thing. Culture is not wrong. There's a lot of opinions, takes like Culture's. Hard left or hard right, those are the takes. Hard right, hard left people that have gone in to see Civil War, they hate this film. They are not happy with what they got because why? They wanted this film to take a side, and it didn't. And I thought that was brilliant. I loved these characters. And I'm not a Kirsten Dunst fan. I love what she was doing. This was about the adrenaline of war journalists, photo war journalists, embedded, getting their fix, and particularly with Joe Wagner Mauta's character. You saw that a lot, and it was hilarious. He was offensive. He was ballsy. He was he was funny. He was strange. It reminds me of these films that I saw in the 80s. Under Fire, Nick Nolte, Gene Hackman, and Salvador with the great James Woods. It's about getting so close to the truth that it could kill you, and that's what it was. To me, the war stuff, the backs, I agree that Civil War, it was wrong. It's wrongly titled. It's definitely mismarketed to fool you guys, which I don't appreciate, especially during these political times. I think it did everyone a disservice by the marketing. The marketing of this was just ridiculous. But I saw it as these characters because it's a road trip movie. Culture. It's a road trip movie of a coming of a new photojournalist and the passing of the baton from one photojournalist to the other. I thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic.
I look forward to seeing it myself, so we can have a little bit more of a detailed discussion when more panelists have seen it. For now, Mark Daly says for $20. Thank you, Mark.
Wow.
Culture Casino's description of the movie reminds me of The Day After, a made-for-TV movie in the mid-80s. Everyone thought it would be an attack on the arms race, but all it ended up being was a tepid nuclear war is horrible message.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. We actually have an interview with the director on our channel, Mr. Nicholas Meyer.
We do. And he spoke about it in detail. I also think that that one is absolutely fantastic. That one and the British equivalent, like Threads, I think is the British equivalent, which is also an absolutely smashing view. Is maybe
not only that, when it came out, it was one of the biggest television movies of all time. I remember that.
Which one was watched.
The Day After.
The Day After, yeah.
That's all that everyone talked about.
They were even showing it in schools and stuff. I think that's what I remember seeing it. I think we watched it in school, but
that's all we talked about. Day After, and Early Frost. Yep. Because they were message movies that television was taking on, and that was kind of bold for the networks at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, back when they weren't so risk averse. So,
well, different model, right? Different time. Completely. Yeah. That I agree with you. There's a through line where me and Culture do agree, but the cosmetics, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I had no political take on this film at all, other than it had no politics. But okay.
Well, I just can't believe I missed your pigtail stream.
I can't believe you missed my pigtail stream.
Well, then there's some
I love you, buddy.
There. And with that, let's put a pin in all things Civil War and move on to the next big topic. Tomok sent us an incredible $50. Thank you, Tomok. Saying, so Arch, with Games Workshop bending the knee, should we expect Captain Titus to be saved by a troop of Adeptus Sororitas during Space Marine 2? Now, Arch, before you ask, remember this question because we'll get back to it. But setting the stage for this, and this is why I invited you to come on today. just going to find the appropriate tweet here. This was something that I saw on X from our good friend Grummz. Tom, maybe you can put it up on screen. Yeah, I put it in the private chat here. So just put that one up on screen.
1 second here while I'm doing that. We did get another big super chat if you want to grab that real quick. There you go. Richard, the dungeon crawler.
Richard, the dungeon crawler, sent another $50. Wow, thank you. Hey, everyone. I have been watching you guys for years. I started a YouTube channel about D&D and other role-playing games. I'm approaching 500 subs. Any support subs from the community would be appreciated. Thanks. I support Paulie. Yeah, as do we all.
Well, check out Richard's channel. Holy crap. Yeah. Thank you so much, Richard. Richard, the dungeon crawler. I'm sure our mods can try and grab the link for you. So we appreciate that.
Yeah. And I appreciate that, Richard. And I appreciate the people who don't support. That's the whole point of free speech. Price of free speech is free speech.
And also, that's how you win over people's hearts and minds. And then change people's minds. So, but anyway, back to all things Warhammer, because Grummz, he posted on X earlier today. Games Workshop Warhammer lies about custodes and retcons lore, gender flipping them in the new 10th edition codex for woke points. So, Arch, tell us, what is this all about? What is Games Workshop doing now?
Well, this was inevitable, in essence. Games Workshop has been having demands for female Space Marines for a very long time. They have resisted these calls for a very long time, and this is their roundabout way of introducing them without actually introducing them. Because the sliver of justification that has been used, not by GW, but by the other people, is that the custodians were never specifically stated to be male. This is incorrect. They have always been stated to be male, and there has never been female custodians up until this point. They have now introduced them, but far more interestingly, because doing it was, again, inevitable. They were going to have to bend the knee. BlackRock and Vanguard owns like 11% of their company combined. This was going to happen. But what is interesting is that they didn't just go out and say, okay, we're retconning the law, we're changing it, there are female custodians now. Instead, they're saying that there have always been female custodians, which is some real 1984 level shit.
I believe this is the BlackRock and Vanguard way. So instead of saying that now we're changing it now, what was before was problematic, they're saying, no. It was always this way. We have now officially rewritten the past.
Yes, and this is actually something that has been not very well received even by the supporters of the idea of female Space Marines, because at the very least, if they would go out and say, okay, we changed it, it wasn't very inclusive, blah, 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 at least they would have the courage of their convictions, right? Whereas here, they're not even doing that. They're simply lying openly that their lore has always been thus. But again, this is a very fan-heavy setting. Nobody is unaware or that this is a lie. And so they're kind of doing the both worst English, Jesus Christ, worst of both worlds. There we go. And I think it's actually very easy to explain this. Although you have to use progressivist logic to explain it, so easy.
Yeah, well, let's try to get into the mindset.
Basically, if Games Workshop were to agree that they had simply just changed it, that would be them admitting they're bad people. Because if you have exclusivity, if you have all female factions or even all male factions, that's bad. And thus, if you accept that, now you're bad. And your opposition, or in this case, the allies for the left, will simply continue to berate you for this forever. But if you say, no, we were never bad people, we were always good people, well, the left aren't going to call them on their lie because they've already weaponized hypocrisy. honesty and truth are not values that they hold very dearly or highly. And so for them to lie actually makes a lot more sense than being honest. This is the exact same reason why we're tearing down statues. You must eradicate the past, not merely change it.
Well, we have a special guest joining us now. Perfect timing, because we're talking about his tweet. Welcome back, Grummz. How you doing?
Hey,
I'm doing good. How are
Grummz,
you?
I don't know if you've met Arch before, but it's if not, it's my pleasure to introduce you.
Oh, I've watched Arch's videos before. Happy to meet you.
Happy to meet you too. I think this is the first time we're speaking.
Yes, it is.
We love
I'm
bringing
afraid
people
Grummz has
together.
become too controversial. I don't know if I can stay on this panel.
Have you guys seen Chato's chats? You talk about controversial, Jesus.
Yeah, we do attract controversy here, one way or the other.
Yeah, a little bit. Welcome, Grummz.
Thank you. Glad to be here. And boy, what is happening in 40K? Is that what you guys are talking about?
Yep.
Yeah, we are, and Arch is something of an expert in this this topic. And
do you still play Arch?
The nearest Games Workshop is 2 hours drive away from me, so it's been quite some time since I played proper tabletop. I used to have a friend group around here, but life, people move away, get husbands, wives, terrible things.
You know, for me, it was I think the oversimplification of the rules. And when Horus Heresy came out, it was a little more of the old school flavor. I really started to get into that, but I was planning a game with my son, but we haven't started yet.
What? 40K players actually have relationships with the opposite sex? What?
Yeah, we're not actually incels.
Oh, wow.
Damn it, Paul, we can't take you anywhere.
Because when I was playing D&D, I guarantee you there wasn't a lot of deodorant use around.
Yeah, but that's D&D. Warhammer is different.
I never played 40K Warhammer.
And you're not packed around the table as closely in Warhammer, so it's better.
Okay. Okay, I only played D&D.
Yeah, well, there's a problem right there, evidently. So yeah, but before we let Arch continue, because he had a brilliant takedown of the mindset of Games Workshop, which of course he argued is influenced by its owners, around like 7-8% of which are you know the usual ones, BlackRock, Vanguard, those kinds of people. But take us through us since we have
Bailey Gifford. Don't forget Bailey Gifford. Combined,
exactly.
It's a quarter of the outstanding shares, which is huge for a public company.
Yeah, let's hear your take on this.
No, let's hear it, Arch.
Well, Arch, carry on.
Back to me again. Okay, but yeah, no, they're a big part is that's the reason why they lied, as I just said, right? They must change the past, otherwise they will forever be bad people. As to why they changed it, it literally is just to take away things. That is the core of it. It is demoralization, and it is claiming something. Because I want to point out now, Games Workshop is probably the closest thing that Great Britain has to a major cultural institution. Like, they are the much smaller Disney equivalent of Great Britain. I mean, what else is there in Great Britain? Like, what, the BBC? There just isn't a whole lot. And Games Workshop is a very large company now. Oh, Doctor Who.
But we see what happened to that.
Yeah, we see what happened to that. And so obviously this is an institution that is ripe for takeover because it has enormous social influence. Like, it's spreading across the world. It has hundreds of stores, all of which are considered brand ambassadors. It has a lot of marketing potential. It's getting into a deal with Amazon to create entertainment. It's the perfect in for the progressives to begin pushing their agenda into a brand new and relatively unknown series. It could be the first step in proper normalization, where the next generation of normies see this thing and go, hey, what's this? Oh, it's woke too? I guess it's just normal now. So it's an enormous win for them. And as for GW, well, it was inevitable. They're headquartered in Nottingham, a very progressive British city. As Grummz pointed out, they have an enormous portion of their company owned by very progressive companies. And again, it's not even about the percentage, right? BlackRock and Vanguard control trillions. When these companies tell a company to jump, they ask how high.
Oh, they absolutely do. And there is a couple ways they wield influence. One is when they're direct shareholders, and I have this info from C-level and studio lead execs in the industry, in the video game industry. When they have direct ownership, they exert that direct ownership. They talk to management, they have access to the CEO, access to the C-level suite, and they definitely push it there. The other way they do it is because is through fund managers. They're able, because of their large investments in funds, they're able to exert pressure on fund managers, which all the normies buy into, you know, like your 401k, all that stuff, to push this stuff. So it's really a multi-pronged push. And there's a company that people aren't talking too much about yet, which when you add, which is at the top of the ownership of Games Workshop, which is Bailey Gifford, and I'll go ahead and I'll post the link into chat here so you guys could pull it up if you want. But they're an investment firm that's all about finding companies to drive change. And if you look at their values and some of the stuff I posted, they're very much about pushing DEI and ESG. I think over there they call it D and I, so it's a little bit different in acronym, but it's completely the same mindset. There is financial pressure to do this, and you know, and it, you know, for whatever reason, these companies are wielding vast amounts of money, and they're focused on media, Hollywood, and games because they understand that a cultural shift is what drives this. And they understand what a useful arm of propaganda games and tabletop games and movies can be.
Absolutely. And this all comes back because you've got to go back to the 30s and the 40s to fully explore this, with the idea of cultural capture, where they are actively building a separate and different political ecosystem to replace the normal. Like, I'm not going to go full Gramscian here because it's going to take an hour or so, but this is all the same narrative and the same plan. Like this is why I keep also saying that this is malicious, right? Because even if the people at Games Workshop probably have no idea why this is so important, why this is so political, there are a bunch of middle management individuals from ye old England. But this is absolutely a combined, unified effort that comes at a very high level and has very deep roots.
The issue is not the investment in the company itself. The issue is that these organizations like BlackRock and I guess this organization you're talking about, which I've never heard of, have managed to equate.
Bale Gifford, I have to do research on these ones. They're new to me as well. But sorry, carry on.
No problem. To me, not to me, what they've managed to do is equate companies that have not adopted ESG and DEI as if they were tobacco merchants. So if you're running a massive mutual fund for the teachers union or something like that, we're talking about trillions of dollars worth of money that you are investing in all over the place. You now have governance issues where you say, we're not going to buy any stock or any company or any mutual fund, because they invest in composite funds also, that have a oil component or a child labor component. These companies have successfully now equated companies that don't have DEI as being child murderers. And so the big institutional investors are going, well, if they're not ESG certified, we're not going to include them in our massive portfolio. That is really the power.
Yeah, it is indeed. And it's only getting worse with Bridge because they're moving away from the DEI terminology, but just the terminology. They're readopting it into Bridge, which is even more comprehensive and even worse. But we'll get more into into that in due time.
Can I ask a favor of all you 40K Warhammer people? As long as I've been gaming, tabletop, everything, I have never heard of 40K, this thing, even though I'm a StarCraft guy, of which I understand StarCraft ripped off Warhammer. And I didn't hear about it until I think Cavill entered the fray. So for idiots like me, can you give me a summary? This is a tabletop game that is apparently one of the biggest entertainment enterprises in the UK. What?
Oh, yes. It's massive. In fact, I believe, let's see.
Give us a summary. Like, what is it and how did it become so massive? Like, I'm not understanding this.
I believe, there we go. Yes. Here, let me give you this in the chat here to give you an idea of just how big this is. The creator of Warhammer was knighted.
Wow.
That gives you a rough idea of how big this is for Britain, right?
Is it the figurines that you get to paint? Is that really the big issue? Is that the big thing?
The figurines you do get, they are gray. The figurines represent several different factions. You can then use rule sets in codexes to compete against each other in a tabletop war game. And they have a handful of different settings. Warhammer Fantasy, which is coming back after they killed it. Warhammer 40K, which is science fiction. And Age of Sigmar, which is Games Workshop decided to do anything and everything at the same time, and it's a mess.
Games Workshop is a tabletop miniature war game set in a grimdark universe. In fact, I think they invented the term grimdark in the first edition rules. Some of my fans are tweeting at me, and they have a market cap of 4.1 billion. So it's an outgrowth of military miniature war games, which used to be historical, and they went fantasy. The way to think about Games Workshop is they are a toy company. All right. So their job is to sell miniatures. That is the bulk of their business and why they defend it so aggressively against the rise of 3D printing and everything else. And they often, they often change their rules with new editions and new codexes, which are the rule books for the different factions. And there's many different factions you can play. And there's vast armies of collectibles that if you were to build an army, you're probably looking at today's prices of around $1,000. Per person playing. And
really?
And unlike people will drop and not just 1,000. The whales and people buying like the Resin Forge World stuff and collecting more than one army will spend multiple thousands of dollars per year on this toy game, miniature game. I don't want to demean it as a toy game. It's an awesome game, right? It's probably got the richest lore of any IP that I know of, and it is it's an incredible story that's been built up over decades.
Right,
and their market cap you can see here is 4.1 billion, and compare that to Hasbro, which is 7.8 billion currently. So you can see that they are a very big toy and tabletop company that dominates the world. They are the #1 IP if you're into miniature gaming.
And to further point out the prices, this is one of the largest models they create. It costs £1,185.
Wow. I thought tabletop was a niche.
It was. Like, Games Workshop has also desperately been trying to go mainstream now for probably 15 years. And they've just always been so close, but never quite managed to break through. And now with the potential Amazon partnership with Henry Cavill, they are probably the closest they have ever come to going full mainstream.
Yeah.
You know what their biggest oof moment was in terms of taking this mainstream? Blizzard, in the early days, pitched them on doing a Warhammer fantasy game, and they turned them down. And so hence, the Warcraft universe for Blizzard was built in because they said we're gonna do it anyways, and Blizzard went ahead, and that was a huge missed opportunity for Games Workshop.
And StarCraft too, right?
Yeah, and StarCraft 2 is obviously the Warhammer 40K equivalent. So yeah, I mean that really put Blizzard on the map. And there's a little copying going back and forth. People have accused Blizzard of copying Games Workshop, but then what's really funny is I remember when the new Tyranids came out after StarCraft, they were pretty much a copy of the Zerg faction in StarCraft. So we had a good laugh about that.
Yeah, and I would also like to point out one thing with reference to the screen grab we just saw about the market cap. I'm going to bring that back just so that we can have a look at that again, because I thought it was really, really interesting. Because there's a point to be made about it. Because what we see here, when we look at that market cap, look at the time frame here. Because here it's like from 2000 to 2005, it's right here, couple of 100 million at most. And then look here, 2010 to 2005. Still a couple of 100 million, like 0.26 billion. And then 5 years later, 2020, it's up to 3 billion. Peaks at 5.5 billion in 2021. Something weird happens in 2022. But then it's right back up to the trend here to 4.8 billion as of 6 months ago. So if we then just look from 2015 till today, it's a steep rise upwards. Like it's a massive growth, and that signals it's grown massive among kind of like the genre audience that influences and drives the mass audience. And this is over the same period, and to me this is the interesting part. It has grown in the same period that Marvel, Star Wars, and everything else has declined by as much, which explains exactly what Arch was saying earlier, how this is a property that if nefarious people want to do their kind of influencing to it and try to rewrite it, as in certain characters in it have always been this way, although they clearly haven't. Now is the time to do that, because the people who would know that, just look at the market cap. Like it was like 200 million worth of people who knew that back in the day, whereas now it's 5 billion worth of people, many of whom don't necessarily know that, whom you can possibly trick and convince. And who knows where this thing might be in another 5 years from now, especially if the Amazon deal happens. This is exactly the kind of things that nasty companies like Bailey Gifford and BlackRock and Vanguard wants to get their hands into.
It'd be very interesting to see the timing of that, because they were starting to take off, looks like around 2017, and then obviously 2020 they shot way up. I mean, that's partially COVID effect, right?
Large parts COVID,
yeah. So
we actually know this from the Games Workshop earning reports. They have complained loudly about how COVID's a big problem, even as they report record online sales year after year.
So I know that at least in video games, 2019, 2020 is when BlackRock and the other funds, the DEI-based funds, started to move heavily into media. And that's when they, with strings attached, of course, and that is when they started pumping these stocks, because they started to have fund managers push them in portfolios and things like that. I bet you anything, if you look back, BlackRock became involved right around, looks like 2020 there. I would be very interested in the timing.
Probably, and because it's exactly correct as well, as you say. This is you correlate this to the fall of Star Wars and Marvel. Well, this was what was expected to be the replacement, and clearly, some fund managers were intelligent enough to see that as well.
Yeah, I would say so, because if we had a different graph here with the overlap of the fall of Star Wars and the fall of Marvel, it would overlap fairly nicely, because Marvel peaked in 2019, so there would be a pretty nice intersection point there, and Star Wars peaked that actually did peak in 2015 with the release of Rise of The Force Awakens, and everything since that has been like one long big chapter of sorrow. So yeah, that's very interesting observations. Arch, I'm curious because we spoke about the future potential and to take it to the next level. And Henry Cavill has been working very hard with this Amazon series. Do you know any updates about that, or can you talk those who may not be aware of this series through its development, what's going on, and what kind of power does Henry Cavill have here? Because it seems he may be going against stronger and stronger forces that want the series to be a certain way.
Well, there is a lot of complications going on with this series, as there's a whole lot of rumors and counter rumor and etc. The latest news is that the contract, some form of contract, has been signed between Games Workshop and Amazon. And then this thing is too, this is a agreement in principle that has later on supposedly evolved into a full, actual, legally binding agreement, but nobody knows as to what. As the initial rumor was that GW, being overwhelmed by Amazonian star power, I guess, put forward a very terrible deal where Amazon would actually own whatever they produced. So if they made a hit TV show, they would own the characters, they would own the setting of the TV show, and everything related to it. Kind of like Lord of the Rings is separate from the books and the movies, right?
Yeah.
Which would have been disastrous for Games Workshop. They would literally have sold the keys to the kingdom if they did that. That presumably then had a whole bunch of renegotiations, which eventually ended in a deal that we don't know anything about yet. But Henry Cavill is, as far as we know, guaranteed to be partaking in it as one of the executive producers. So he has probably a fair bit of power, but it, of course, depends, because they could listen to him a lot, in which case I think it might actually be a good project, or they could simply give him a title and then put him in a corner and run rings around him, because he is, at the end of the day, first and foremost, an actor rather than a director or producer.
I think one thing that's sustaining Games Workshop here, and you can see that their sales have been going up. Part of that is just massive price increases. They switched over from metal to plastics, and they greatly cut costs. And of course, at the time, they promised us all the higher quality and lower prices, but it never happened.
I remember that, yes. I remember reading the article in which they said, like, oh, this will be cheaper for us and for you. Yeah.
Yeah, but instead, every 6 months or so, they raise the prices of their miniatures, and players continue to pay. And I think one thing is that the franchise has not gone full woke yet. You know, we're just seeing the beginnings of it. And I think that is going to have a huge impact on them. So I think one reason you haven't seen any sort of like Marvel fatigue or anything like that is because they have not gone in that direction yet, but they clearly signaled that yesterday that this is where they're going.
They've been signaling it for a while. There was even an article where they denounced their highest-selling faction, the Space Marines, with the article being titled, "The Imperium is built on hate, but not Games Workshop," where they went into detail like how the Imperium was terrible, how the Space Marines were bad.
No,
all of this nonsense.
Everyone's bad in 40K. Everyone's bad. It's not any one faction. That is absolutely ridiculous that they have to come out and distance themselves.
But isn't that what's fun about a game like this? Is that everyone's bad and nasty? Isn't that the point?
Well, there's been this trend to make villains more human and relatable. You can't have evil anymore. And if you do have something evil in your creative IP, you as the company that authored that have to issue some sort of statement to distance yourself from it. It's almost like a trigger warning. In fact, if you look at what is it, Evil Hat games, they recently had the controversy with the Tomb Raider game that's coming out, saying that they're going to erase all the colonialism and not make it about raiding tombs anymore. They published another game,
fake artifacts from fake tombs.
they're truth seekers. Yes, I don't know if they're going to return the artifacts or what's going to happen. But they published another game, a Cthulhu game, and they had this whole trigger warning in the beginning of their rules, where they had to distance themselves from H.P. Lovecraft because of the way he named his dog, which was very offensive. So,
what's about this? Well, anyway, yeah. And for those wondering, it's a slur beginning with N. That's what he named his pet animal, whether it was a dog or a cat. I think it was a cat.
Oh yeah, it was a cat with a hard R, right? So yeah, they're you see this distancing of themselves from the source material that they're basing their products on. And I don't agree with a lot of authors, but I love their books, and I don't agree with a lot of actors, but I love their movies. Somewhere along the way, we lost that separation of author and creative work, and it's just this massive trend now to crap all over whatever got you popular in the first place. So I'm not surprised there's this article by Games Workshop. I can hardly believe it, but I'm not surprised that they're trashing the Imperium. Why? And of course, it's not just the Imperium. Every faction in 40K is just bad.
Yep, I linked it in the private chat as well. The Imperium is driven by hate. Warhammer is not.
Yeah. My understanding, Flash Gordon Emperor Ming was bad because he wasn't breastfed.
Unless he's Asian, like Alan Ning, then you had to feed him rice. Did I say that?
The Tower arguably good in 40K, but it's like sort of like a sort of a cult mentality. It's for the good of all, right?
That and the controlled genocide of occasional human populations.
Yeah, sometimes, but of all the factions, they propose to be good for the greater good.
Wow.
Why didn't they pick on them? Genocide seems a lot worse than what the Space Marines did.
May I ask a normie question?
Go for it.
Are you still in it?
Go on.
Are you guys at all optimistic, cautiously optimistic on anything that Cavill is doing behind the scenes, or that he's attached, his excitement, and also his kind of his motivation to keep things honest in regards to IPs and the fans?
I am, at least. I may be blue-eyed and naive, and I've been accused of that, and provably so on many occasions. But Cavill seems like a guy who does actually give a shit about the integrity and the quality of the products that he works with. And if that passion can translate into the wider piece of entertainment, then I am hopeful. But again, it depends on how many other people he's going to have to work with.
I'm excited. I mean, look, he advocated on set during The Witcher to be truer to the source material, and he walked from the show, right? So why would he then go around and join another show where he wasn't promised some more creative freedom, perhaps? So that is speculation, of course, but that is hopeful because otherwise you're just walking from one problem to the other. And he's a huge 40K nerd. He's a huge 40K fan. So I'm very interested to see what happens with that. But if they start, down this road of trying to erase the past and destroy the older lore, I think he's going to be very frustrated, and B, people are really not going to watch it.
It could also, I want to point out here too, real quick. It could be something incredibly dangerous for Games Workshop. Now, that's why they might actually give him a lot more creative control. Because Games Workshop has an enormous amount of street cred with the nerds. If he comes out and denounces the project, that would be devastating for them. And he could very well use that as kind of a nuclear option. Like, no, we're going to do this. Otherwise, I can't stand behind it.
There is history of Amazon letting productions do their own thing. We're not talking about the Rangs of Wrong, and when they do, those TV series, sorry about the dog, those TV shows tend to be really good. And but again, it's the less that Amazon creatives have their hands in it, the better it is. So I'm hoping that too as well, fellas.
But on the other hand, you got this. This is a tweet, but it has a quote from Aaron Dembski-Bowden, who I believe is the lead narrative designer, basically the fluff lore behind 40K. And what he's talking about here is he's saying that they tried, they wanted to change the lore, but they were told from the previous IP overlords, i.e. the original creators, that there are no female custodian models. They're all males, so don't write any female ones. So they got vetoed twice trying to do this. But this is exactly the progressive reactionary activist force that's in a position of power in Games Workshop that's pushing for this change now. And if they have any sway over Amazon, and I have reasons to believe that they don't, because just from my experience on the Warcraft movie, it was very hard for the IP holder to get any creative say in the movie, although they did eventually, and that's why the movie was made for Warcraft. But if this guy has any sway over it, I think you're going to see the Amazon series polluted. So time will tell.
Yes, Adam Dembski-Bowden is one of the Black Library writers. They have a huge publishing arm, which is Black Library. Every single one of their writers is progressive as hell. I have even gotten access to a little writ that they have on their back end, where they explain what they can and can't talk about on Twitter, for example. Nothing right-wing whatsoever, on threat of being fired. And no mentioning of any unwanted individuals within 40K. I'm mentioned by name on their lists.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not surprised somehow.
So,
it's always the writing team.
All progressive.
It's always coming from the writing team, and even they're not the people who actually make the rules and the miniatures and everything else. And I was thinking about putting an infographic showing the amount of DEI dumpster fire by department, and I think you have the least in programming, and you seem to have the most in community management, and in writing. And by the way, community managers on the official Warhammer account on Twitter are currently blocking anyone who is questioning why they're doing this lore change with custodians. And this is exactly not the way to handle a public relations problem when you have one. Their tweet on custodians is over 2 million impressions right now, and they are handling it very poorly.
Well, they've got to delete it, because if they don't, what they have to bring to their corporate overlords eventually, because this is almost 98% guaranteeably the community management team and smaller entities within GW who have either done it by themselves or told the tops, oh, no, this is totally popular. If they come to them with page after page after page of tweets going, you lied, you lied, you lied, you lied, this is not the law, you lied, you lied, you lied, that is going to cause a lot of problems. So they need to do damage control now.
This is why I talk about community managers, because most people don't understand that the developers of video games and the developers of these tabletop games, they don't interact directly with the community. In fact, sometimes they're told not to, and they're too busy making the game. So as an exec, I relied on my community team to tell me what was going on with the community. I would get reports of the top 10 issues, every week and daily if there was a specific fire. If you have activists in those positions, if you have people, and I've shown so many community managers that are just flagrantly political, even about their own game in their personal tweets. If you have people in those positions, they have zero incentive to forward that as the accurate picture of what the community is. What they'll say instead is it's just a couple of trolls and their sock puppet accounts, and all led by Grummz, who we all know and would hate. And so you shouldn't listen to them at all.
Well, you also have a DDoS server in your basement, right?
Oh yeah, they claimed that I DDoSed a website, but but people found the receipts. The site was never attacked, and was never down for a significant amount of time. And yet, this is still the common quote unquote knowledge.
Completely ruins the rumors I've been trying to spread.
Well,
I'm sorry.
That's it. Yeah, no tea with you.
Darn.
But yeah, well, tell me, how much influence does this narrative writer at Black Library, is Black Library part of Games Workshop now? Did they buy them, or were they a subsidiary? What is that relationship, and how much influence can this writer have?
Well, Black Library, I'll put a link in there. It's owned by Games Workshop. It is their own publishing arm. They release all 40K literature stuff, and there's a lot of it. There are uncountable volumes of tomes in the Black Library, including audiobooks, and including 40K for children, by the way, because, yeah, that was something we needed.
I did a quick look. He's got like 30 published novels under Black Library. I didn't see any credits in the game lore, though. You know, the actual rulebook fluff. For those who don't know, the Games Workshop books have excellent fluff, and it's usually like 2/3 of the book is all fluff, and then the rules make up a very small portion of the core rulebook. And I'd be interested to know if he's credited in that, or if he's really just kind of more of an outsider on the writing and novel arm of it, and he's trying to influence the core game.
He is not a rules writer, but he probably does have significant influence, because the writers for Black Library are, well, see, back in the day, there's actually still, I believe, an open submission form where you can send in anything you want to Black Library, and they might consider publishing it. Because back in the day, this was actually a fan-driven business. But there are relatively few big Black Library names. There's Adam Dembski-Bounston, Graham McNeil, people like that. I believe these people do have a tremendous amount of influence within it, just because they've created so much of the lore surrounding it. When Graham McNeil writes something, for example, I think, in fact, he's been credited with several lore innovations, like glow globes or lumen globes. He invented that. Promethium, he invented that. Stuff like that. And these people are undoubtedly listened to by the upper management stuff. And it's also just the fact that their politics are in vogue right now. So their precise level of influence, I can't say, but I'd be very surprised if it was nothing.
Well, what started this was the 10th edition Codex rules for the Custodes is about to come out, and there have been leaks. And in one of those leaks, there is a large short story, and I hear it's very well written, about a female Custodes. And that sounds like something that could have come from the writing department, obviously, for sure.
Oh, wow. By the way, my mistake. Dan Abnett was the one who invented Promethium.
That sounds better. Abnett, I think Abnett is more old school.
Yep.
And he writes some excellent novels.
Yeah, Dan Abnett, he also is familiar to many who don't even know it. He's the one who wrote the seminal run on Guardians of the Galaxy, the one which inspired the movie. That was Dan Abnett. He also wrote the miniseries Punisher Year One, which inspired the 2004 movie, partially. So he's
a fantastic writer.
Author writer for a perfect fit for something like Warhammer.
Abnett is a great writer, and he too, personal account, very progressive, but he always manages to keep it out of his writing, which I respect tremendously.
Yeah, I've read a bunch of Abnett's novels, and I didn't detect any DEI. No DEI detected in Abnett novels. So yeah, fine, separate it if you can. Everyone's entitled to your opinion, but you got to stay true to the lore and what made the franchise popular and what built the fan base. It's reckless for these companies to go and try to retcon this stuff and try to destroy the past. If they want to take it in a new direction, why not invent new stuff? I never get this. It's always about destroying the past.
Well, that's the interesting thing, actually, because the word retcon, right? If they were actually retconning it, people would be more fine with it, because at least then they would have the courage of their convictions, as I said earlier, right? If they came out, okay, we've changed this lore, because we did it because we were inclusive, our investors, blah, 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 whatever, right? But they didn't. They outright lied about it. That's the tweet you pointed out, right? Where they say, like, oh, no, there has always been female Custodes. No, there hasn't. We know this. Why are you lying?
Oh, yeah. It's the total gaslighting. And here's the reply I made directly to, Games Workshop and Warhammer, where I showed... that in 1987, when the Adeptus Custodes were first introduced in the Rogue Trader rule set, they say they are men, right? And in as recently as I think 2017, 2018, when the 7th and 8th edition codexes came out, they refer to them as the Brotherhood of Demigods, and that they are sons recruited from nobility. So this is just straight up gaslighting when they say that the Adeptus Custodes were always female, and that's just not true at all. And I haven't been blocked yet by them, strangely enough. They're blocking other people pointing this stuff out.
Oh, give it time.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe
you gotta give them more than a few seconds to respond.
Yeah, maybe right after this stream, I'll get my surprise. But it's not just here. I mean, if you go through all the artwork in my principal pinned tweet, I went through and I did a little research here. If you look at when the Custodes were really rendered into art in their traditional gold armor, it's from the Horus Heresy card game, which was made by Saber, which is a third-party studio, but obviously directed by Games Workshop. And yeah, right, that tweet right below that, where I've got the screen caps. I went through every Custodes card in the game, and the ones that depict Custodes without their helmet, they're all universally male. They have never been depicted as female in any of the artwork. So you have the text, and you have the tradition. For Second Amendment rights, people will know what I'm talking about. Text and tradition. That's completely contradict the current community manager tweet by Games Workshop, and it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous to say that. Change the lore if you want, dig your own grave, lose all your customers, but don't try to gaslight us.
Yep. Personally, I'm happy they lied, because it proves malice, doesn't it? Like, you're not being honest with us. You're just you're culturally captured now, because this is how it has to be. They have to change the past. They can't acknowledge it.
Well,
you're right. It's absolutely malicious.
Apologizing to the left is the worst thing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
You can't apologize.
So the only thing you can do is make sure that the past never happened.
Correct.
Yeah, so rewriting history. Courtesy of Bailey Gifford, BlackRock, and Vanguard.
It's a very Marxist thing to do, isn't it?
It is. It is one of their favorite pastimes.
Yeah, we had a situation in Toronto where, and it looks like it's going to continue, where the usual suspects freaked out over the name of one of our streets, and they're now changing the name because it should no longer represent this individual. And after some research, it turns out that this person was actually an abolitionist, not a slave owner. So
they don't care about that.
No, they made the decision that this person owned slaves, and now it turns out he was actually the opposite. But it's too late. The wheels.
The accusation has been made, and you are guilty upon accusation.
Yes, that's it. Done.
Yeah. Once you are credibly accused, that's their keyword. Credibly accused.
I like it.
You are guilty upon accusation, and we can now act accordingly.
Yes, you are unmutual, according to the prisoner.
There didn't have to even be a reason to change the Custodes, because the Sisters of Silence, which was an early faction, were also permitted in the Emperor's Palace, and they were null psychers, and they were all female. My son just pointed this out, right? And he's a huge 40K lorehound, and they were I guess they were ejected at some point from the palace, probably for being psychers, which is a no-no. But they could have brought them back, and they were supposed to fight alongside the Adeptus Custodes, and they could have easily brought them back. We have Sisters of Battles too. Oh, my son is saying they were the ultimate psychic hunters. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, you needed women, because who else would wash your clothes and make breakfast?
Well, I mean, psychers are a huge menace in the universe, and So, so they would go out and hunt the most dangerous psychers, and they were sort of together with the Adeptus Custodes. They were like the right arm of the Emperor. And what's really interesting is that the Custodes are supposed to be the ultimate warrior, right? They are the height of perfection. They are tower over regular Space Marines. They are more perfect in every way than Space Marines themselves. So of course, the first one they decide to gender flip has to be better than men, and we have to put them in the Custodes, because then we got to show all the Space Marines they're inferior. That always happens too, every time.
Yeah. But let's see what the audience has to say, and in the super chats more specifically. And Arch, we started this with a super chat. Let's get back to the question there. Tomok wondered for $50. So Arch, with GW bending the knee, should we expect Captain Titus to be saved by a troop of Adeptus Sororitas during Space Marine 2?
I'd prefer it, because, see, that's the thing. The Adeptus Sororitas have always been around for a very long time. They're basically female Space Marines. But that's, of course, not good enough. Like, they could have just made the Sisters of Silence a bigger part of the Adeptus Custodes, and I would have no objections with it, but that isn't the point. It's not about representation. It's about exclusivity and taking your exclusivity away from you.
Yes.
Yeah, you already have female Space Marines in the Adeptus Sororitas, and that's my wife's faction along with the Tyranids. And, that is, and she's plenty happy with those. You know what? She wishes they looked more beautiful, because they had pretty ugly faces on the miniatures. And and that's the other myth that gets thrown around, is that women can't play the game unless we make ugly female characters in video games, right? We have to make them more male.
Inclusive. When all of the women look like dudes on fentanyl, only then is it accessible to women.
But it actually pisses my wife off. She wants them to look more like women in epic power armor, and she's not getting that from Games Workshop.
So you've got a nerdy wife?
I have a nerdy wife, a completely nerdy family. We're 100% nerds.
Wow, I wish I could get my wife to laugh at my jokes.
That's how you know they're actually good ones, Paul.
Doesn't matter. We have a contract. That's the marriage.
That's true.
Yeah, that's it. For death and jokes do us part.
Well, you don't want to do the joke that's going to part you, I would say.
No.
Because that would be like the final straw. She'd be like, that's the one, honey, all this time?
You don't know which joke that is until it's too late.
That's what I just said. Yeah, he'd be like, what? That's the one, honey, of all this time? Jesus, I didn't think you cared that much about your sister.
I have a joke that made her laugh. I told a joke that my wife laughed at, and I made the mistake of thinking she wanted to hear more.
Yeah. You should have quit while you were ahead.
That's exactly the point. Quit while you're ahead.
Indeed. But we got another $50 super chat. Thank you so much from Kevathar1138, who says, 7th edition Necron player was encouraged by the previous Arch-led GW about Face, but I guess all Western IPs must fall. Either we all rediscover old games, seek out the East, or make our own. I close my wallet and wait until then. Now, that's actually a really, really great comment, because there are older games. There's a ton of retro games. You have indie games out there. Grummz has already suggested that the best thing that gamers can do going forward is, don't play any AAA games. Or certainly do not pay for any AAA games. Or wouldn't you say
Send
so?
a message.
Yeah,
2-year moratorium on AAA games that go woke or otherwise abuse the gaming consumer with their over monetization. That's all it will take, and that will flow downhill, and that will result in layoffs. And while that's unfortunate, those layoffs will largely target the activists, because it turns out the activists are the least productive in your company. So for Games Workshop and Warhammer 40K, this 10th edition codex that's coming out about the Custodes, just say no. Say no in great numbers. Do not buy it. Do not buy the new miniatures for that faction. And I think you will send a very clear picture to GW.
Arch, what say you?
Absolutely. And the thing is, too, Games Workshop has only just started on their path downwards. It has taken half a decade to a decade to bring down the likes of Disney and Marvel. It will probably take just as long to do it with Games Workshop as well. So don't get discouraged if they don't collapse overnight. It just isn't going to happen. But as their project and products get woker and woker, and it is now inevitable, because once you've started changing history, there is no going back. There is no brakes on this train. They will eventually reap what they have sown.
Slippery slope. It starts with the Custodies. It's going to come down to the Space Marines. Just a matter of time.
Exactly. And with that, let's get back to the to a little bit further up. We have more topics to discuss. I just want to go through the super chats related to Warhammer, and then we will move on to Capcom, which I'm
although I have to screen grab this because this is the kind of dialogue I want in my sitcoms and movies. Like the 7th edition Necron player was encouraged by the previous Arch-led GW about fight.
At Blizzard, we're all nerds at Blizzard, right? But
yeah, I'm a nerd too.
Anybody who quotes like the rules and stuff like that, we would always do that voice, and we called them hemis because it always sounds like, well, actually, hemi, and they just go on and on. But we love them.
I can't write better stuff than that.
And Just David says for $10, I want to note people are promoting GOG. Help me out here. What's GOG again?
Good old games, I presume.
Okay. But that company is woke. CD Projekt confirmed this with their 2021 ESG report. GOG wants and encourages its employees to be activists.
Yeah, so they're referring to the video that CD Projekt Red's CFO released on their investor relations channel, promoting their ESG score. You have to realize every public company publishes an ESG impact report.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they do that, because it directly affects investment and it directly affects how hard the mutual fund and fund owners are pushing their products, and also affects their credit rating with the large credit rating agencies like Moody's and etc. And it can shave half a point to a point off of your credit lines and your interest, your credit lines and your loans when you have this. Now, if you read the impact reports, different companies focus on different things. For example, Tesla has an ESG report too. And people would say Elon is pretty based, right? But if you look at that impact report, it's much more focused on the eco-friendliness of everything, and less on sort of the DEI forced outcome, in hiring and promotions and things like that. So they focus on different things, but this is common. Every public company is going to publish one of these things because it makes a huge financial difference. And people who say it's a conspiracy theory that the money doesn't talk here, they're just completely wrong. When all the facts are out there, anyone who knows anything about finances can go Google this for themselves.
Indeed they can. And Paulies Plain sent a message to Cultured Casino saying, hello, Cultured, with love from Norway, dude. You have access to authentic Canadian poutine. Thank you to Cultured Casino. And yes, thanks to Cultured Casino, I will screenshot him this super chat. He unfortunately had to leave because he had other business to attend. Everyone check out Cultured Casino. Dowie Ben has been a member for 30 months. And then let's see, moving on to, here we go. Mark Ashamed said for $5, just give Warhammer 40,000 the Age of Sigmar treatment. There are female Stormcast Eternals after all. You can make the new IP as inclusive as needed.
Hello, Mark Ashamed. Yep, no, they're like, oh god, we could get into a whole mess of shit with Age of Sigmar, which was their new inclusive IP, where they did indeed do just that and try to make it like a new thing and inclusive, etc. And it sells terribly. There was even rumors going around the other day that because they were shutting down a lot of the model production for Age of Sigmar, that GW were getting ready to kill the setting entirely. So I guess we'll see where that goes.
Is that because the game is mostly men are attracted to these kinds of games primarily?
In part, like with Age of Sigmar, there's two things. One, they killed Warhammer Fantasy for it, which was very popular. And two, it is the most... how do I even put this? Think of Lord of the Rings and then make that about 17 times more fantasy, and you're still only halfway as fantasy as Age of Sigmar is. It is the like 1 million armies march upon 1 billion fortresses across 1 billion plains, and people are like, I don't care anymore. It's too large now.
I think Henry Cavill will do more to bring women into the Warhammer universe than any of this inclusivity stuff. You put a hot guy leading the series, and you're going to get a lot of women really, really interested in playing. And when they do, they're going to want beautiful female factions to play. And so that's going to be very, very interesting too.
All Cavill Cavill, for instance.
Well, all Cavill has to do in the live action version is sort of quip, I'm naked under this armor. Yeah, that's all he has to say.
Just put him in a hot tub. There you go.
There you go. That's never been done before. He hated those scenes, by the way.
Well, that's because he was doing them from someone who hated The Witcher. Joseph Citadino says for $20. Thank you, Joseph. The woke are literally chaos. Corn equals, if you don't agree with me, you are enemy. Nurgle equals fat acceptance, reveling in filth and corpulence. Siench, you have to correct my pronunciation here, they like witchcraft, and Slaanesh, I don't think I need to explain this one. I take it that these must be Warhammer terms.
Yes, the gods of chaos. Slaanesh is literally the god of degeneracy, so yeah. The more you look at the Wookiees movement, the more they seem to fit into the actual literal demon gods of the 41st millennium.
You have your safe space. It's in chaos.
And then why don't they just have a woke faction?
They already do. It's called chaos. The chaos cultists, specifically.
Well, it's not complete chaos until you no longer have yours. That's the end goal there, of course.
Well, yeah, that's a large part of it. It is more about denying you your thing than about claiming their own.
Exactly. They don't actually care about their own. It's not that they want it. It's more so they want you not to have it.
Yes. These are the same people that were bullying us like 15 odd years ago for being into nerd shit.
Oh, absolutely. People don't remember that, but if you played tabletop, if you played video games back in the day, you were bullied for it. And now that it's a big moneymaker and popular, they want to eject the original nerds and make it their own thing.
Yep. Yeah. I can attest to this as a witness. I have never been into tabletops and miniatures or even magic cards, but I remember that those that were the nerds of the lowest possible standing and were bullied even by the other nerds. Not saying that's a good thing, but that's
nerdception.
Yeah. And Changer of Ways, Beep Up Boop says for $5. Curious on the Warhammer take. Games Workshop needs more and better competition to force them to be better. But I have not been gripped by other war games lores. I'm curious. Do they have any competition in the Warhammer field? Is there anything like it? Is competition going to help? Aren't they pretty much the only game in town?
Everything's a distant second or third.
The main reason too is because there are settings with better rules. Kings of War, I think, is a better rule set. There are none with models as beautiful, though that gap is closing with 3D printing technology. But the biggest thing is 40K has such a beautiful and expansive amount of lore. It has such a fantastic universe. And nobody's been able to do that
with decades of content. I mean, no
Yes.
studio today could just start up and match the lore of Games Workshop just by the sheer amount. But the other thing it's got going for it is first to market entry network effects, right? We talk about this in the business world all the time. If you have a group of customers that are socially connected and require each other to play the game, then it's very hard for anybody to break away from that and find other players to play with. So they have a network effect that is gigantic, built up over decades. They have lore that's rich and gigantic, built up over decades. No one's going to be able to take that on. What's going to happen is they're going to have to mess up as badly as Wizards of the Coast did with D&D to give anybody an entry, or they've got to get a competition from a personality like Critical Role and Matt Mercer, who's going off and doing his own game now and ditch D&D. That's the only way I can see it happening.
Yep. There's no hope of a organic competitor. It's going to have to be something quite special, and it's probably going to have to ride the next cultural train. In other words, an anti-woke product will probably be the only chance if GW goes crazy.
And GW has to mess up. GW has to really drop the football and give someone an opening.
Okay, so good stop then, because that's what they were in the early stages of right now, is them dropping the ball. Now we just need someone to materialize to pick it up again, and we don't know if any such candidates just yet.
Maybe Dylan Mulvaney can lead one of the factions.
You're giving that. Be careful. I mean, that may happen here before you know it. If the Amazon thing comes true, how much?
Hey, Amazon has done well with Fallout.
We'll get into Fallout before long here. I just want to get through these Warhammer chats particularly. Obduello says for $10, hey Arch, if possible, could you explain why us fans of the original Fallout, here you go, hate what Bethesda has done to the series, especially with the new show? I lack the word space and many don't understand it. So
I disagree.
Arch, enlighten us.
Yeah, see, I despise the new Fallout series. It reduced the NCR to a band of raiders. It reduced the Brotherhood of Steel to a bunch of pathetic bullies. It reduced New Vegas. It made Voltec start the war. In my opinion, it took everything that had been created previously, all of the choices that the player made through Fallout 1 and 2 and tactics, etc., and made it all irrelevant. It feels to me like almost a petty vengeance on behalf of Bethesda to ruin everything that came before it.
So you would say that the new Amazon series really isn't all that then? It's also rewriting history.
In large part. Well, no, it's not rewriting it. It's just resetting it to zero. Because the story of Fallout wasn't really necessarily post-apocalyptic as much as it was post-apocalypse. The rebuilding of society, the survival of society after the bombs, like with tribals and the NCR and Brotherhood of Steel and the various factions warring over the remains of America and beginning to build another thing. It was the various ideas, ideologies, and movements of the new world competing for space. Whereas in the Fallout TV show, I feel as if they've taken all of that and reset it back to zero again.
Well, didn't they erase New Vegas?
It's still there, but it appears to be in ruins.
Well, that's really funny because when New Vegas came out, players really, really loved that version of Fallout, but it wasn't done by Bethesda. It was done by Obsidian Entertainment, right? And I think that there was a little resentment there, and people were saying that this is a manifestation of them getting back at New Vegas being more popular by completely destroying them in this series.
So are we going to talk about Fallout?
Well, you guys seem to have seen it, so let's briefly jump into Fallout now, because I know that you only have limited time.
Yeah, I got
it. So yeah, let's hear your brief verdict on Fallout now before we move on with.
On that note, Pilgrim Media says for $2, I binge watched Fallout. I like it. Season 2. Well, what do you guys think?
So let me be the network whore here, because that is the hat I used to wear. And you've got a whole bunch of competing stakeholders. in something like this, and you guys agree with that. That's not a discussion. You've got a shit ton of normies that are going to outnumber the people who have played the game, that you're going to have to convince that this is an interesting show. And to a certain degree, any game is not that dissimilar from a novel, that you could take a book. Well, Steven Spielberg said it in the most obscene way. He said, you know how you adapt a novel? You take the novel and you throw it in the trash. So it's not too dissimilar for even a property like Fallout, which has its lore and history. I think what the producers have done fairly well with this is cherry pick aspects of the game. So from a newbie TV watcher, it's going to look very original, unique, filled with characters that they've probably never seen before, with unique ideas. And the way they handled Walton's character and the flashbacks really made it a very interesting experience compared to what the games were like. So they've really turned it into a TV show. Now, I'm sure they had the debates where they went, okay, so what do we take out of this to make this interesting to a generalized audience versus do we piss off the game players? And obviously you as game players, they pissed you off. Me, who's played only New Vegas, it didn't piss me off. But I also understand the lore and how much is left to explore. I didn't like what they did with the Brotherhood of Steel. I thought that was not particularly good, although I didn't mind the notion that they were all pussies. And you know, the Sanjo Panza character who was carrying the armaments or the supplies for his master, that was an interesting dynamic where there were two what do you call them? Not slaves. What do they? The guys who carried all that shit with them.
Squires or something.
Squires. Yeah, that's
servants.
It was a parallel to the knight and the squire, right? And so I didn't mind that. That was kind of an interesting twist. So to me, just viewing it as a piece of TV, I thought they did a fairly good job of making it as gross and intriguing as the original games kind of got. I was really surprised how well they kind of imbued it with its feeling. But I understand what your point is. But I think it's I think it's going to be a very successful TV show. Although now that they've gotten rid of the head, I don't know what they're going to do for a plot device in season 2, because it was the head that made it work. The first episode was a bit of a mess. They kind of got the Fallout wink wink nudge nudge kind of humor in the vault, but then they lost it with the steel, whatever, frickin' hell, I can never remember everything.
Brotherhood of Steel.
Brotherhood of Steel. So they lost it completely there. But it was the head. It was the cutting off the head in episode 2 was what really made the series, I thought, work. There you go.
Well, I presume they're just going to follow the dad now, because the man obviously is the monster in our storyline, whilst the lesbian lovers are the heroes.
Well, they killed the mother, who was, well, do we assume that they're lesbian, or they just kind of liked each other?
In the modern day, I assume lesbian.
That would be a shame, because in that world, you kind of need people to procreate. So that would be be many future generations lost right there if the woman proves to be a lesbian. I mean, there's a time and a place for everything.
Mother decides to kidnap child. Father doesn't like mother kidnapping child.
Right.
Goes to retrieve child. Goes a little far in doing so, blowing up Shady Shan's somehow. And then Mother's lesbian lover goes and kills even more people, but then she gets to be the good guy at the end. We forget about the fact that she attacked the vault and killed them all.
This sounds awfully progressive.
It
You can skip the progressive part because it just sounds awful. I haven't seen this far yet.
But luckily they left her to the very end. So the stuff in between show 2 and show 7, I thought were really neat.
So this is kind of like Dune Part 2 then. It's really fantastic all the way up until the end, and then it falls completely apart.
I would say the ending could have been better. But
so you just saved me like now 7-8 hours worth of running time.
The middle is very entertaining. It really is as a
well,
TV
it doesn't
show.
help if you don't stick the landing.
No. You know, I'm a slut.
No, I just have expectations of my entertainment. And part of that expectations include stick the landing.
Well, my point is that no one who has not seen or played the game will have ever seen a television show similar to this.
No, that's cool.
That's
true.
Cool
and all. But I still wanted to stick the landing because if it doesn't, I'm going to feel like I wasted my time.
It does-ish because the protagonist and the ghoul go off together. I think that's the fun part of the show because they really do work well together. And she's not a Mary Sue. And she's
the
not
ghoul
a
was the best character. And I didn't mind Lucy. I actually think Lucy did pretty well.
Yeah.
Hated Maximus, and I hated his acting in particular. I felt like he looked like a deep water fish in nearly every shot.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah, all right. And then also
deep water fish. Okay, I get what you're saying.
I haven't seen. I've only seen bits and pieces, and I'm like, this woman, she shouldn't be going off with a ghoul. She should be going off and have babies and save humanity. But yeah, that's just me.
There's a brilliant scene where because she's raised in the vault and they can't really procreate, so it's a very big deal when they can procreate, right? So she hasn't been raised with a lot of a filter sexually. And so she turns to Maximus and goes, "Hey, wanna fuck?" And he just goes, "No, I think that's dangerous. I think my pee-pee might explode." He full of cuck looks at her and goes like, "No, I wouldn't like to have sex with you. I've been raised wrong by the Brotherhood."
Yeah, that's Brotherhood.
Patrick Robinson says for $4.99 with the release of the Fallout TV show. Does anyone remember the Manic Mansion TV show, and why was that so drastically different from the games?
I do not.
That was produced in Canada, Maniac Mansion. And I don't know. I don't know who made the decision of that. That was done by Nelvana. It included Flaherty from SCTV, who just died. Yeah, no, that's one of those interesting things. But like I said, somebody out there makes the decision that, you know what, no one plays video games, so we're just going to forget about this stuff, and we're just going to use the name of the show, and we're going to start from scratch. You never know what a TV exec is going to expound.
You know,
are you familiar with Manic Mansion?
No, but I've spent some time around Hollywood, those exec types, and no one has ever talked like that. How you doing, Chato? Yeah, we got to get
those are Canadian executives.
Ah,
that's my that's my impression of them. No, they don't talk like that. Right.
And then Chipmunk and the Vengeance, because Grummz will be leaving in a couple of minutes. But since we have him here, I would love for you to chime in on this before we return to Warhammer. Chipmunk of Vengeance says, "Nice knowing you, Capcom, but there will be only one winner in this civil war, and it won't be you. Gamers are stronger united." And what he is talking about here is this story right here from the Park Place. Great reporting from them, as always. Capcom goes full woke, reveals its localization team alters video games for cultural adaptation, preserving context, now that's an oxymoron right there, and inclusive storytelling. And the gist of this story then, of course, is that Capcom, they aren't merely translating their video games and the stories in them for various international markets. They're fundamentally reimagining them, i.e., they're wokeifying them for Western audiences. Now, Grummz, is this something that you are familiar with? Do you know what Capcom is doing here? Are others doing the same? And
well, they're saying the quiet part out loud. I mean, this is something gamers have been aware of for a long time. That when games get localized, and also people who follow anime, when anime gets localized, you often find that there is so much editorializing, and far beyond that, injection of political positions and the altering of characters in order to promote a message. And for a long time, localizers have been denying this, saying, no, we're just doing cultural adaptation. This is something that is necessary that we do. And we're not having a political agenda here. Well, Capcom came right out and said it, right? Capcom put up a job listing where they said, we want political activists to change characters, change gameplay, and to get a more diverse audience out there. So what really is different this time is that they feel like they're in a position where they don't have to hide it anymore, and everything that everyone ever suspected of them is 100% true. And gamers are sick of it. It's like, okay, you've been telling us, you've been gaslighting us, saying it's not happening, and when you come out and say it, you just confirmed everything that you told us we were crazy about in the first place. That's why gamers are so upset about what's happening in Capcom.
Arch, anything you want to add to that?
No, it's pretty much exactly it. The only thing I'd say is I'd give maybe Capcom the tiniest benefit of the doubt that this might be just the localizers going crazy. But it is exactly what they're doing. Like, they say it outright. Like, hey, we're going to change the cultural context of this, which is, of course, absurd. When I sit down to play a Japanese video game, odds are I do it specifically because it's a Japanese video game. I'd rather it not be westernized.
I believe that is the point. Paul, Mr. Chato, you are also like your games Japanese, or do you feel
I don't play Japanese games, but I prefer watching anime with English subtitles. So I don't know.
So you don't want the Trudeau version or the Trudeau approved version, because that's what Capcom is going to give you, at least game-wise.
I hope they fall on their faces. What can I say?
Yeah. And with that, Paul, unfortunately, you have to be leaving us. But thanks for joining us today and for sharing your insights into Fallout and for seeing it. So I may no longer have to. We shall see. I actually really want to see that based on what I've seen so far.
So I'm going to be doing a review of my final verdict after I did my green light, yes or no on the show, and I'm also putting together a fairly big essay on Hollywood needs to do a year of the comedy where they make nothing but comedy, because that's really what we lack in the theaters. We don't have classics, like Arsenic and Old Lace and just these wonderful comedies that Hollywood used to make en masse, and that's what brought people to the theaters. So I'm putting together an essay saying we need to reassemble the comedy Avengers, Ferrell, Stiller, everybody that's still alive, and the studios have to finance 100 comedies for the year, and I think that's going to kickstart the theaters and people coming back to the movies. That's my theory. So I'm writing an essay on that today. So.
Let me know if you need an extra essay.
FA or essay. Anyways, Arch, nice to see you again, and Grummz always. I mean, it's just amazing to hear the level of expertise you bring to this whole thing, because you're a You know, you're a programmer. Although I've read you're washed up and haven't done anything in 10 years, so your opinion is worthless.
Yeah, completely.
That's what I hear. I'm going with what the people are saying on X. You know.
Oh yeah, if you don't, you'll get canceled. So
a pleasure, everyone.
Absolutely.
We'll see you later.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care, Paul. And always been a pleasure to have you here today again as well. Grummz, you unfortunately also have to be leaving to go back to be cancelled on X. Good luck to those trying with that.
I have many hater fans. I can't disappoint them.
Yeah.
We did have a few specific ones for Grummz here. If you could hang out for just
let's
go
through those.
I just had it here. Sorry about that. I'm juggling a bunch of stuff in the background here. That's my fault. Let's see here. I know there was a couple that were specific for you. We have a lot. That's a good problem.
Yeah, we got one here. I'll start from the bottom. Mercenary X21 says for $2, the rabbit hole is deep, Grummz. It is about evil.
Yeah, I just think the methods are evil, and the maliciousness that it's gone about is evil. The destruction of not just the lore, but the people, the demonizing of the people that are responsible for it. That does happen too. There is a maliciousness there that doesn't belong in diversity. If diversity is truly about inclusion, you got to find a way to go forward without, trying to destroy people.
Yeah, and that brings us right to this super chat from Tennille89, aka Dislikes Punts, who sent us $20. Thank you so much. This isn't something I can really quantify, but it seems like the ESG behavior has gotten more capricious lately, like tactless and almost spiteful. If so, then I bet that's due to strain on the perpetrators. Little victories. Yeah, what do you think? Are these actors?
They've always been inclined that way. I mean, for the past 10 years. But what's happening is that they are starting to lose it because the normies have started to become aware of it, and they don't like what they see. And so the tide is changing, and so they're becoming far more strident than before.
Absolutely. Like the entire bridge thing is a desperate attempt to push things even further. Whilst they have been more or less unmasked, woke has become a bad word, a generally understood bad word, and they're beginning to see their cultural hegemony slip. And like all rats on a sinking ship, they'll start clawing through the bottom to get out.
And then we got one from Jacob Foxfires 964 for $5. It says, Grummz, we all know that these people will still say that those card picks could still be women. They want women to look exactly like space women.
How can you tell anymore? Maybe they identified as women. That'll be the next move. It's like, no, you're wrong, Grummz. All those men in the cards are not men. They actually identify as women, you bigot. I love that question.
Yeah, and here's one for both of you. Horseradish Power says, I miss when Matt Ward was the big threat to GW.
Me too. My spiritual liege. We had no idea how good we had it.
Yeah, which rule set did he write? Which edition?
I think he got started with the Chaos Demons Codex in, was that 5th or 6th fantasy? It's been so long. Because the thing with Matt Ward is he actually always wrote decent rule books, so long as they were put up against other Matt Ward books. But it was his fascination with the Ultramarines that drove everyone away from him, as he seemed to be of the opinion that they were the only Space Marine chapter.
Yeah. So it looks like he was principal on 5th edition. I don't know that much about him. I have heard the name before. He obviously had a large impact on Games Workshop. I don't know what the falling out was, but hey, if you miss him, must have been something good about him.
He was the worst of the bygone age. Like we used to complain about him having too big of a favorite faction, which seems quaint now that we're looking at Games Workshop going like, you don't like your setting anymore, do you?
So he was a political activist, but for the Smurfs?
Yep.
And we call them Smurfs because the Ultramarines are blue armor. So
I just missed the fact that he was a political activist for something in universe.
Imagine that. Can we get back to that?
That'd be
the good old days.
And then I don't see anything else specifically for you, Grummz, which is good because I know that you're a little bit on overtime already. So everyone go follow Grummz. The link, of course, is in the description. Anything in particular you want to plug or parting words on your way out the door?
Just follow me on Twitter. We're trying to get the word out. 2 years to stop the spread of wokeism and AAA gaming. So please come over, follow the Twitter account, join the growing army of deviant discontents, I guess.
Thank you for giving me the title for the next video right there. Thank you also for joining us today and for hopping in on such short notice. Always a blast to have you. You're always welcome here.
Thank you very much, and I'll see you guys later. It was a great stream, and I'll come again, that's for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Take care, man.
Bye.
Arch, how much longer do you have?
About 15 minutes tops.
Okay, then we just have to breeze through with the remaining super chats for at Warhammer, which is for Arch, before we cover anything else here. Let's see here.
Quite a bit of them, actually.
Yeah.
Looks like I accidentally missed some for Paul, too, and I'm sorry I've been distracted with stuff.
Yeah, well, it happens. Here we go. Chaos Sonic, going back to the top here. Chaos Sonic says for $5. GW was already on the woke path since Warhammer Plus, and forcing the fans to get rid of the Emperor had text-to-speech.
Yes, Warhammer Plus is the Games Workshop animation service, which they replaced all of the fan animators with. In fact, they threatened lawsuits for the fan animators, forced them to pull down their Patreon accounts, their YouTube accounts, all of that stuff. Warhammer Plus has been an enormous failure. The animation quality is lower than we got from the fan animators. And those fan animators they threatened into coming to work for them have near all quit, because GW treats them like shit. So, yeah, that has been one big, fat, unremittent failure.
Oh, good going there. And Joseph Titadino says for $5, 10th edition of 40K is shit anyway. I will never forgive them for taking away the psychic face and psychic powers. Sench Damon's player, so yeah.
Yep, I've heard the 10th edition is not very good. And I heard the Custodes Codex was apparently nerfing them into the ground as well, which is interesting. It's like, let's make female Custodes. Let's make them really bad. Like, interesting.
And in relation to the previous comments on ownership of BlackRock and others, Change It of Ways, Beep Up Boop says for $5. Moral of the story: if you are a creative company, never go public or be acquired, lest you compromise the very core of your goal. Unfortunately, that kind of deal with the devil is sometimes necessary to get the necessary startup capital to get going in the first place. But if one can help it, if it's a way to do it, stay independent. Always good advice. And Base Player 2011 EFI says for $4.99. Forgive me, does anyone actually play Warhammer? Going by social media, the answer is no. People just paint figures and complain about the lore. Arch, what's with you guys? You're just like 10 people complaining about lore. How many do really play Warhammer? Other than that, you have like, what, a $5 billion market cap now?
Well, let me put it like this. GW doesn't give a shit if you play the game so long as you buy the models. In fact, they'd probably kind of prefer it if you stopped playing the game, because then they didn't need to update the lore all the time, or all the rules.
Indeed. And then let's see here, moving on. Yeah, Arch says Marksman of 11-7B. When will we get Brothers of Silence to join the Lads of the Lake? And can't forget the Bros of Battle. All inclusive, also Grummz for Archcat. Oh, sorry, we missed on this one before, but we'll make sure he gets it.
Yes. So they also they made another group of knights, female, the other day. The Bretonnian knights were made female. I think we even talked about that. And spurred on the Lads of the Lake movement because we need male representation in the female spaces. We need Misters of Battle to come into the Sisters of Battle and ruin their fun as well.
Yeah, why should they get away with it? STR Red Wolf says for $5, so the latest Warhammer 40k codexen are heretical from the Lexicanum, the If the Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device series on YouTube was right. And of course, reading all of this, I wish that I had a text-to-speech. But yeah, any thoughts on this, Arch?
Oh yeah, unironically, the new codexes are heretical because they are arguing for something that does not exist within 40k. And the only way there could be female custodians, of course, is if there was some major mutation of their gene seed, I guess. It's not a good position.
And then Chaos Sonic says for $5, anytime that a product becomes mainstream, that usually signifies the death of franchises. For example, Marvel and DC as it becomes corporate. Yeah, and you seem to think that the same could be happening to Warhammer, depending on what happens next here.
Very much so. Like, because to become mainstream is to become popular for more people. And the thing that we very rarely appreciate a thing because everyone likes it. 98% we like a thing because it's the thing it is, not in despite of it. And so when that thing becomes something for everyone, more often than not, it loses the thing that made it good in the first place. It becomes gruel.
True that, yeah. David Nelson says for $5, tabletop is great. I built my own called Moons of Nitzeria.
Nice.
Yeah, cool. Mark Tronstad says for $4.99, I got into Warhammer because of everything else like Star Wars sucks. Yeah, too bad.
Yep, and turns out that you said that a little bit too loudly, and the investment bankers at BlackRock can hear you.
Yeah, they did. That's kind of like what happened there. And Chaos Sonic 1 says, didn't the Lovecraft game from them fail to get funding?
I think they released it. I could be wrong, but if it's the game I think we're talking about, I'm pretty sure that did get a release because they were the ones who deliberately said the world of Lovecraft is great,
that he was talking about the Lovecraft game from Evil Hat.
Yes, that's the one because they were the ones who denounced Lovecraft. I think it got released. I don't know. I haven't looked into it.
And all the matter of Lovecraft, Abduello specifies that he didn't name his cat. His grandfather did.
That is true. He just kept it.
Yeah, and he and that's a cat probably didn't come when called anyway, as most cats don't. Yeah, and then Joseph Cittadino says for $5, the only faction in 40k that's not evil is Tyranids, as they are just animals being animals. Nids are no more evil than an apex predator like a lion.
I mean, not wrong. They don't eat you because they hate you. They eat you because they're hungry.
And Go and Shogi says for $4.99, I paint the Lord of the Rings line from GW, but if my brothers in brushes call boycott, I'll stand with them. This hobby is too expensive for nonsense. That actually is a strength, isn't it?
It is. I mean, when you're relying so much on people's willingness to wail out for your product, even a small drop in customer base can lead to severe consequences.
Indeed. And Joseph Cittadino also says, you laugh, but the Emperor beat the mace of Sench while taking the form of a little girl. Watch them trans Big E. Watch them trans the Emperor.
I'm sure they will eventually.
And Hypergiver 2 says for $5, GW making women into custodes tells you all you need to know. They hate women.
I hope so.
Daniel G says for $5, can't wait for the ham-fisted orc female representation. Are there orcs in Warhammer?
There are orcs. They're spelled specifically with a K and not a C. That's how you know they're legally distinct from other orcs.
Ah, clever. Very clever.
Very clever.
And Jack the Outcast says for $5. Hey, Lodge and Breed Deb. To be a real fan of Warhammer, you have to hate GW, from Primaris to female custodes and Cull.
Oh yes, I have come full circle from thinking like Games Workshop's not that bad. Sure, they're a bloody sucking vampire corporation, but okay, fair enough. To nope, Games Workshop does need to burn.
Which I love it when people have their own personal arches like that. See what I did there? And Changer of Ways, Beep Up Boop says for $2. Check out Raging Heroes for pretty female models. Yeah, that's a nice alternative, isn't it? Lord Metalman says for £5, GW announced female custodes, the Nerf custodes for 10th edition. What did GW mean by this?
It is a little bit weird, I will admit. Almost like maybe there's a little bit of an internal tiff going on at GW. Like the rules team were like, no, let's make them shit. And then didn't tell the upper management. It is weird because the code is, they were a bit overpowered. They were the meta army build. So a little bit of a nerf was probably expected, but they really hammered them.
Yeah. And Scarebro says for $19.99. Thank you, Scarebro. We really appreciate the support. GW never learns, but didn't they beta test torching a franchise with WHFB for HOS? I have no idea what this is. And aren't they now resurrecting the old world? At least they can do that, but this will be a permanent stain with no exit strategy.
Yes, they killed Warhammer Fantasy Battles for Age of Sigmar. That turned out to be a terrible idea, and you know that because they are relaunching Warhammer Fantasy Battles. So yeah, Age of Sigmar is probably selling really, really fucking poorly. And I guess maybe this is what they're going to have to do with 40k. It's too racist, too exclusive. Got to burn it all to the ground and start over. I mean, I kind of hope they do. I would like to see a plunge in GW sales myself.
Yeah, we can hope. And Changer of the Ways, Beep Up Boop says for $2 to someone, dude, F you, the Inquisition is woke.
The Inquisition is very far from woke, presuming it's serious.
Well, there you go. Adam Wofford says for $5. Oh, no, that Star Wars girl bought the 10th edition of Space Marines after hearing Henry Cavill was into Warhammer 40k. This edition had to be pre-ordered. So should we tell her to get an older edition instead?
Perhaps, or just wait for the Henry Cavill merchandise. As I think Grummz is entirely correct on that point. Henry Cavill is going to do a lot for the female representation in 40k. Because turns out women may not be particularly into a bunch of space racists killing one another, but they are into Henry Cavill's naked chest.
They are, very much so. And Scarebro also says for another $19.99, thank you so much. Also, hearing GW wants to pivot HeroClix type skirmish product for physical gotcha and also lower the barrier to entry that's protected the hobby. Didn't they see MTG and D&D implode? Seems like a 5-year plan, not 30-year.
There are a lot of rumors and some fairly credible ones that GW is heading in the direction of doing skirmish rule sets instead of the larger battle sets because they're trying to, again, casualize the product. And I believe those rumors probably have a lot of legs to them because... Again, as every product goes more and more mainstream, they will aim more and more for a more and more casual audience. And a game that takes on average 2 hours to play is not very casual.
True that. And also Changer of Ways, who accused someone of saying that, well, the woke thing, was specifying, joking, kind of got attacked so much for being not woke. I felt like I was labeled a heretic by the MSM that I just embraced it. Screw dogmatic tyrants. Yeah, now it makes sense, doesn't it? Then Alin Octavian Moldovan says, Battletech is another wargaming universe, and a lot discovered it when GW messed up. Alas, Catalyst, the IP holders, are woke that cancelled their own writers. Yeah, so no help there then.
Yep. Blaine Pardo. They even released a special trans anthology writings for Battletech, so Battletech is most assuredly not a safe haven from wokeism.
Yeah. And Abduello says for $2, a big problem is that Beth has stated it's canon.
Bethesda, yeah. They've stated Fallout TV show is canon.
Yeah, okay, right. And Burst Angel says for $5, why would I want ugly female space marines when I have the beautiful and angelic sisters of battle?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why would you want uglier characters?
Indeed. And then let's see here. And then it's... that's Fallout. And Elizabeth Young says for $9.99. Thank you, Elizabeth. I play JRPGs to escape real life, not have my local real life shoved into my face inside my fantasy of any genre game, etc. I'm totally sick of all this BS. Yeah, aren't we all? And the Baron says he's been playing 40k for 20 years, spent a lot of time laughing at what's happened to Star Wars. I'm not laughing now. Yeah, that's true. I mean, in Norway, we have like this poem, Du må ikke sove, which means you mustn't sleep. Because they may not come for you now, but they'll come for you eventually.
Yep. 40k had a long and safe run where it got to benefit from all of the other factions and competitors going woke. Now it has gone woke. We'll see how it deals with it. Probably poorly, if I am to be any guess.
Yeah, and we are reaching the final inning here now, Arch. Mercenary X21 says for $2, they do evil just because they get off on suffering. Yeah, that's a best case scenario. And Master Amaris says for $1.99, why not just make Seamus or Eve for Warhammer?
I mean, I kind of wish they would have just... See, there's the thing. It was never a possibility that they would make something new, because the point isn't to have representation, the point is to take away yours. But it would be really nice, wouldn't it, if they could have been satisfied with something new? Like, I would love that too, but again, it is not the goal. That's why they don't do it. They don't make a new female faction because that's not what they want. And they themselves know that. I've been referencing this video I did several times while I was covering this. There was an article on a very progressive fan website that basically outright stated, I don't care about female space marines. I don't care about the law. I want it for political purposes. Hey, it's something to be said about being honest, at least.
Exactly. Or put in other words, I don't want it for me. I want you not to have it.
Mm-hmm.
And then T-Neil89 says for $5, Arch, are we sure that BlackRock's representative here isn't CS Goto, and maybe this is a chance for revenge?
CS Goto is another famous individual. CS Goto used to be one of the writers for Black Library, and he became famous for just making shit up out of whole cloth. He had no respect for the lore, and he just came up with the wildest things. So he became a complete meme. And if this was his long-awaited revenge, then good on him.
Yeah. And then of all of the various assorted Warhammer names I've been botching completely while narrating these super chats, T-Neil89 points out Andre pronunciation here is Custodes. Is that about
that
right,
is correct.
Arch? Okay.
Custodes. Guardians and or caretakers.
Well, I shall see if I can't remember that for future reference. But
we do have one I wanted to grab here because Brian is leaving. He's one of our mods. He said, "Hi all, at the pool in Vegas before heading home after the meetups. Wish y'all would have been able to make it next time." Yeah, we were planning on being there. It just didn't work out the way we were hoping.
Yeah,
thank you for being here, Brian. And thank you for being here, Arj. We appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Love having you. You're always welcome, and thanks for being able to step in on such a short notice as well. That is very much appreciated.
No problem. It was fun. Thank you for having me. And I shall skedaddle then, I think.
Yeah, the link is, of course, in the description. Anything else you want to plug on your way out the door?
Thank you very much.
I guess he didn't.
Yeah. Well, anyway, check out Arch. Link is in the description. Follow him on X and follow him on YouTube. He is the absolute lore master of all things Warhammer and quite knowledgeable when it comes to video games and tabletops, even beyond the realm of Warhammer as well. So check him out. And with that, it was very Warhammer heavy, but now we got Paulie. You have to go as well?
No, I wanted to say goodbye to Homeboy, but I missed it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Well, we do have quite a few super chats left here, so now let's go back to the top here. Dr. Longdongler has been sent us a super sticker, so everyone, please smash that like. We forgot to tell you earlier in the stream, but please do that. Tim Hayes has been a member for 33 months. New membership stream coming very soon here. Truth, Hope, Love says for $4.99. I love how the media picks and chooses what is propaganda and what isn't to them. Yeah, unfortunately, they made themselves the arbitrators of that, and their definition may not always be completely in line with the readers and observers' definition. Let's just leave it at that. Then Warachi says, Andre, can you say how long and why you are in the Azores? Have you been on an Atlantis dig with Graham Hancock? As much as I would love to, sadly, no. I haven't spoken to him since the interview. Maybe I'll reconnect with him at some point. And also, I'm not actually in the Azores. The Azores are further north. I'm in the Canary Islands, and I'm here not because of any Atlantic dig, but for something as mundane as family commitments, because my wife is from here. Truth, Hope, Love also says, yeah, Kristen sucks in interview with a vampire. I liked her in that. I liked her in most.
I think he was being facetious.
I think that's
because she did get nominated for that. But no, like personally, I mean, yeah, when she was younger, she was fine. But ever since she's been MJ,
that alleged behind the scenes footage of her parents when they're drilling her for the media, when she basically says that she hates working with Tom Cruise because he's a creep. I don't know if it's
That's the first time I heard that.
But that video,
I've never heard that before.
Like 20 years ago, of a girl who was drilled by her parents, who looks very, very much like a young Kirsten Dunst, era of interview with the vampire, and her parents are trying to drill her what to say with the media. They're like, so tell us, how was working with Tom Cruise? And she says, I hated it. He didn't say not a creep. He's a freak. That was the word. They're like, okay, no, stop. You can't say that about Tom Cruise. He's a celebrity. So you need to say something that the media wants to hear. So who knows if it was real or not, but that was fun, and I'm inclined to believe it may have been real. I haven't seen it for 20 years, but I'm sure it's still out there on YouTube or some other ancient video service. And Matt W. has been a member for 29 months, saying, morons at Sony should have pushed Ghostbusters to Memorial Day. It's like they forgot how to studio. Yeah, Tom, you've been saying this.
Yeah, like what? Yeah, if Sony has anybody in their marketing / distribution department who made this snafu, they need to get rid of them quickly or move them someplace else where they're not going to do any more damage to their company, because this was a horrible place to put this movie.
But Tom, yes, and March was for all the studios. There was just too many releases. Like
that's what I mean. Yeah,
exactly. That's the point. It shouldn't have been in March at all. It should have been like summer release.
Because like what Dune, Ghost. I mean, it is just too much traffic, and you're gonna get some of these bigger films.
Yeah, and that somebody's bigger film was a movie about a certain monkey and a certain lizard, both of which collectively stomped on Ghostbusters in its second week of release. I mean, you'd think someone in Sony would have seen that, March is really, really crowded, and summer is really, really open, and something like Frozen Empire might be a nice, chill movie in the heat of summer, where there is no giant monkey and giant lizard to step all over this movie. I mean, I do not want to... I don't wish anyone to be fired per se, but there's someone in Sony marketing. There's someone more qualified at their job of selecting release dates than whoever is there right now. I'll say that.
I mean, that's yes, and I have so many problems with marketing from studios for various reasons, from them purposely being divisive to just not getting the films that they're actually promoting. But this is like, it's such a cluster F.
This is a no-brainer. I mean, and Tom, you've been saying it ever since the date was announced that this is a horrible date. It's going to bomb just because of the release date.
First of all, you have the 40th anniversary of Ghostbusters this year, which for years was Columbia's biggest movie of all time. They should have used all of this next month in May to say, like, we're going to re-release Ghostbusters, the original film, in theaters, Ghostbusters 2, and Ghostbusters Afterlife again. If they really wanted to put 2016 out there too, go ahead. Because, they're going to, otherwise, or Paul Feig would bitch. Anyway, so you have 4 weeks. You could have done that in the month of May, and then the first weekend of June, instead of opening up Bad Boys there, you move Bad Boys off to later in the year. Put as much distance as you can between Will and that slap, and then you promote Ghostbusters coming up in June. There's nothing to really compete with it in June besides Despicable Me. Yes, that's going to do very well, but it's two completely different audiences for the most part.
It's really strange because a lot of these were.
There's definitely something strange in the neighborhood. Yes.
Hey, Bustin' makes me feel good. Pushback from COOF delays to the strikes, but like all the same month. I think the only one that kind of got it right was Warner Brothers, seeing the light of Wonka, Chalamet, pushback. Let me get Chalamet and Zendaya back to promote March 1st, because remember, it was mid-March, then they pushed it back again to March 1st. But yeah, very strange times.
Indeed, yeah, and it's such a shame because I kind like the movie wasn't everything I had hoped, but it deserved to do better than it did, and now a sequel is basically up in the air, and it's only because of the release date, because someone screwed up at the studio side of things. That has nothing to do with the movie.
Yeah.
Moving on, Pete and Kat has became members. So yay, awesome. Mark's 47 has been a member for 36 months.
That's 3 years if my math is correct, right?
Yeah, that's about right. And Diswiz says, Culture Chan, I miss your side tales.
Sorry we missed this when Culture was here. I see we also had some for Paul that we didn't get to, but thank you guys so much. You guys had a lot to say today, so we had a lot to get through. We appreciate it. Sorry we didn't get all these.
Forward the super chats for those referenced. And then Packing Protons says, for $20, thanks for the support. I hope this topic isn't too off limits, But this American has history and distant relatives in Scotland. How did the UK and Scotland fall so far into DEI communism so fast? Is it worse than our descent into madness? I have thoughts on this, but I will let the two of you in the US mainland answer. Why has the UK seemingly fallen into the woke madness faster than the US? And the US has fallen pretty badly. I don't think that anyone would disagree with that.
Indeed. And then what else we got here? We got packing.
Yeah, well, there was a question there.
He was asking you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got distracted.
As
that was my fault.
Yeah. As Americans, how are we viewing this, that UK and Scotland went too fast as Americans? Okay, I'll just say really quickly.
Yeah,
I absolutely think it's just is because they're smaller countries, and the experiments were kind of happening as far as legislation and whatnot during the lockdowns, and some sped up quicker than others. But I definitely think because they're smaller countries, we're a United States. We're vastly different takes, states' rights, etc. That's my quick overview there.
You're onto something there. I think it's a matter of size, because the US is so big and so massive. If you look at just California and just New York, what has happened there mirrors perfectly what has happened across the UK. Because population-wise and everything, it's more compatible. But the US is so big. It is so many states. The US isn't a country. It's a continent, or part of a continent, with practically different nations. You have those kinds of differences there. That is simply not the case with the UK.
No.
Once you get a whole good enough hold of the Commonwealth, it's over. And that's kind of like what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, and really fast with that, you can even localize this question into like the states. How come California went quicker than Texas, or this and that? Because of the states' rights that we have. I mean, we can go down a really deep black hole on this, but I know
we can, and that's a rabbit hole. That's best
rabbit hole
Rumble, probably. But I think the real short story is just that the US is so much bigger. There is so much more to conquer. You have 50 states. That means there's 50 different entities that needs to be conquered. Whereas in the UK, it's just a Commonwealth and Northern Ireland, and it's a much smaller job. So I would say just because of that, because of the scale, it goes faster in the UK. But when you look at individual states in the US, some of them have fallen just as deeply or worse.
Yeah. I mean, and thank you for the $20 packing protons. You can, on the flip side, people say, well, socialism has worked in this Scandinavian country or that Scandinavian.
No, it hasn't. I can answer to that.
But no, you're right. But the thing is that's what I hear, and I'm like, well, one, it's a very tiny country, but has it really worked?
And to answer that really quickly, no. All of those countries, all of that social welfare, it was all built on capitalism. And all of those countries are now broken hellholes, especially Sweden. And that is due to socialism. That is due to wokeness. That has completely corrupted the nation. And I'm sorry to any Swedes listening, but they will, of course, be in agreement with that's exactly what has happened. And Norway is just 10, 20 years behind them. Then Richard Waring has been a member for 2 months, saying, sounds like they're looking for that climate change word you can't argue with. They hope to find that one word that will stick. Yeah, like climate denier, you mean. It can also be replaced with unbeliever, kuffar, anti-vaxxer, that kind of stuff. Like some nice word to cultish word to separate the unbeliever. Skull Reader 2016 says for $20, thank you so much, DEI is China's social credit score system in the West. As a leader of BlackRock said, you have to force change. Yeah, that's indeed what they are doing. And there will be an update video on that before long here. Vengeful Dragon says for 14 South African rounds, I really, really hope Paramount shareholders sue. I agree. I think that many shareholders should sue across the board because every single company that practices DEI, fiduciary duties to shareholders are violated in every single one where DEI is practiced, because that is mutually exclusive with the fiduciary duties to shareholders. And now for Paramount in particular, that company has been mismanaged, like every past iterations of it and its sibling corporation as well. So yeah, the remaining shareholders, they really should sue.
Absolutely.
Who to sue, of course, that's a different matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's did you guys see all the stuff about this or not? This was something that was a vote that came
is there something particular that have come out with Paramount right now?
Yeah, it's about they had a proxy vote. And they voted against having basically looking into the I'm trying to remember how to word this. They voted down transparency.
Oh, of course.
Prior to the sale.
That down?
Yeah.
Did the shareholders vote this down, or did the board vote this down?
I believe it's the board. Yes.
Oh, right. I think so, because if the board voted,
so we're looking at kind of a similar-ish situation to Disney here, but just on a lower level. Sorry.
Yeah, but basically that means that the board votes that no, we do not want the shareholders to see our incompetence so that they may sue us. Yes, indeed, the shareholders should sue, because again, this was another example of the board violating their fiduciary responsibilities to the shareholders, because
funnily
they voted
enough,
against transparency. That's a violation of fiduciary duties.
This is actually one of the things that was distracting me in the last couple hours here. I was trying to keep up with this, but yeah. So basically, the way they're saying this, there's some people claiming that this also benefits Sherry Redstone over the shareholders as well. Obviously, and which is another issue, like more so, or whatever, how you want to put it. So yeah, this is something that's kind of heating up, going on right now, in the background. I know we haven't been able to keep up with it as much because of Disney being the bigger story, but yeah, it looks like there's a similar situation happening in the background with the whole.
I think there's going to be many such stories over the upcoming years here, as one corporation after the other all go by the wayside.
The morning talk is though that this could derail the entire sale, basically. Yeah.
As Paramount shareholders slam a Skydance deal, director said to be exiting board. Could threat of legal action derail talks? Published April 11th by Deadline Hollywood.
Yeah, this was from before, so like now they've had the vote. So yeah. So like I said, it's kind of I've been low key following it, and of course, Vengeful Dragon here himself's been sending me info on it as well, to help me keep up with it. So I appreciate that, but. Yeah, I wish I had more time to spend on it, because yeah, it does seem like it's an interesting story, but sadly, just the bigger.
We'll get around to it eventually. Yeah. We'll get around to it eventually here, and give it the attention that it deserves, because it is another very interesting case study in when corporate governance goes very, very wrong. And the DCV Titan says salamanders are good-ish boys. Vulcan lives. I guess this must be a Warhammer reference of some kind. But yeah, thanks for the support. And Dragonblade79 says for $10, hail Midnight's Edge and the panel on the discussions. I learn and laugh a lot. Andre, Tom, and everyone are fair with their takes. Shout out to Chato for being the only news I can trust. Yeah, sorry for not getting this one earlier.
It's appalling, but you can trust it. That's right.
Yeah, it's appalling news. It's most trustworthy, and it's very, very well vetted let us say. And I'll say right here also kudos to Paulie of Latinos Land and Midnight's Edge Espanol fame for also delivering very trustworthy news that you don't necessarily get many other places.
Nope.
So we have to look a lot for them. And Dragon's Blade 79 has become a new member. Welcome, glad to have you. Jesus Davila sent us a super sticker. Please smash that like. Hitchhiker 42 asks, are those pictures of the Deadpool and Wolverine popcorn buckets legit? Never
don't
get
think
any
so.
good buckets in the UK. Yeah, Tom, do you happen to have a picture of those buckets? Can you also?
I don't have one
have
handy, but let me see if I can bring one up here. I do. I
You
think
know-
I know which ones are the real ones, but yeah.
When we were covering CinemaCon in Vegas last week,
Did they show you guys the buckets?
no, but you know, Feige was really kind of doing some funny takes on, or his version of funny takes on all the buckets, the popcorn buckets that have been taken over, being part of the zeitgeist, as he was saying. So, you know, maybe someone took that and made a joke. You know,
Because there's been people running with memes, but I seen one that
Right.
I think is the actual one.
Right. But yeah, no, we had Rosa Parra on the ground. She went every day to the CinemaCon, and you know, got some good coverage there, guys.
Okay, actually, no, they're all fake. It's not been revealed yet.
Yeah. And
Yes.
next year, hopefully we'll be able to join you in CinemaCon. That should be great fun. But alas, this year wasn't possible.
Yeah. Well, you know, I said, you know, because Rose is one of our writers, and I said, well, you know, she brought it up. She had gone to Sundance. I said, well, if you could get us in, we'll you know, I'll make it happen. So she got us in. It's like, all right, well, you know, let's do it. I didn't go. She was the only one that we could afford to send, and like I said, got a lot of good coverage. All that is on our playlist on the Slants main channel, and we cut some clips too on the Espanol channel with Fletcher Williams.
Yeah, fantastic. Deadpool and Wolverine popcorn buckets, not legit. Tom, can you see if we have anything on the Rumble side in the background there? And meanwhile, Paulus Plain says for 100 Norwegian kroner. Hello. No, I meant call me Chato and not Cultured Casino, as you said earlier. With love from Norway, dude, you have access to authentic Canadian poutine. Yeah, that makes more sense. Unfortunately, just like we read it up too late to reach Culture, we read it too late to reach Chato as well. But I shall screen grab it and send it to him, so it's all good. And thanks for the support, my friend. And then we got several in a row here from Testing, who 2741, who says for the first $5. People in denial how woke Fallout show. White men bad, corporations started the war, not commie China. Well, that's kind of accurate. Trans BOS, Mary Sue, main character, etc. Awful. He continues. And she is Mary Sue, best at everything, and there's lines that all but say communism is best. Watch Synthetic Man's review. Tolerance for woke sickens me. I haven't seen it myself, but like some of the stuff I've heard seem like I really want to see it for myself to assess what's really there and what isn't. But thanks for your input. Burst Angel says for $2. Why would I want ugly female space marines when I have the beautiful angelic sisters of battle? We actually did get this one before.
We read that one, yeah.
Arch, and we got that. What? Yeah. And Pete Dan Katz has been a member for 18 months, saying, well, it's that time of the month for another one of Pete's milestone chats. This month's pearl of sagely wisdom is, if the toilet chain is swinging, then the seat is still warm. See ya next worm. Yes, indeed. That's words of wisdom right there to live by. And Obduello also has thoughts on Fallout, saying Fallout show is Force Awakens, undoing the previous hero's accomplishments, like how the New Republic was destroyed, undoing Luke's victories. And Jason Webster says, so far, Godzilla X Kong New Empire has earned $436.8 million worldwide. It's on track to earn $600 million by the end of its theatrical run. Now, I don't remember the budget, but I do believe that would translate to certainly sufficiently successful to carry on with the franchise.
I'll look. Yeah, I'll try to find it.
I do believe that. While you look for that, Hypergiver 2 says, I'm just glad to see that on this channel we don't resort to attacking people's families and spouses because we don't agree with them. Yeah, no, that's a low blow. Also, I miss Chris. Yeah, so do I, and hopefully he'll be back one of these days.
Yeah, and I know what the earlier part's referring to, and yeah, that's just stupid.
Yeah, she's as someone who's met and hung out with the neurotic family.
I have no idea what's going on here, but
I'm kind of in the middle of it. I'm surprised you didn't, but okay.
So but just really fast. Gary's wife, Melissa, and Gary, they've been here at the house. Great people. She's a fantastic lady, a lot of class. And I don't know who this bozo is that is talking trash, but yeah, you cross the line. I mean, all that stuff eventually crosses the line. That's that problem with all that. That's the garbage, toxic end of Twitter. But no class, no taste. Adios, mofo.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
And a lot of people just like to stir up drama. Let's just say so. Yeah. Abdulio sends in 5 and says, "FO show is."
We got
Force Awakens.
We got this one, yeah.
Okay. Jason Webster's. We got this one too.
This is the next one.
Okay, sorry.
And I put the budget in for. I don't know if you saw in the private chat.
Budget for 135 million to 150 million.
Oh yeah, then it should be that should be a sequel incoming then.
For which movie?
Godzilla X Kong.
Oh yeah. They brought the budget down with between the last few here. Remember when they did that with the last one, Andre? Yeah. So and there was already a story last week. I think we brought it up on Mead, or I remember talking about it somewhere. Maybe it was Mr. H. I don't recall, but yeah, Toho is pretty happy from what we're hearing. Legendary is very happy. Warner Brothers is very happy. So it sounds like they might be trying to move forward with more deals. Because for those who don't remember, I believe this Godzilla X Kong film finished their original or their second deal they had with Toho or whatever. Yeah. So I think they're going to extend it though. So this has been a very good year for Godzilla. Very good year.
Yeah, I should say so. And then Gabatron says for $5 Canadian, how is it possible that the X-Men 97 showrunner was fired by Disney? So they could show they're not biased in relation to the Gina Carano lawsuit? No, that has nothing to do with each other. Those are completely separate things. Because he didn't say any public political thing that is anything remotely similar to Gina Carano. So we officially don't know, other than the leaked reports, that he was creepy and difficult to work with, and they found his OnlyFans creepy. Which means there's something they're not telling us, and it could very well be that he didn't make the series gay enough for their liking. If they hired him specifically for his experiences as a gay black man, and he genuinely just wrote a great X-Men animated series that,
as of now, that's all we know. Yeah,
obviously from the point of view of a gay black man, maybe all there's to it.
Because we came up with several scenarios when we started learning about this, and this was one of the few scenarios we did come across. Was like, and I remember mentioning, just because I remembered he was the guy who worked on The Witcher and stuff like that. And I remember what he said initially when the show was first announced about only hiring people who actually were familiar with the show, or at least the X-Men or whatever.
What an idiot. That doesn't make any sense.
Right? And that's where I was like, so some of this just is not adding. And that's what I said before. It's like, yeah, I get it. He showed his pecker, but A lot of people have done a hell of a lot worse in Disney to where I don't see that.
Yeah.
They knew about all this stuff. It's not like they didn't know.
No,
so this was just an excuse, kind of like,
for lack of better words, they don't mind the black pecker. It's the statements about, you know, having expertise, writers that honor IPs that they're working on.
Well, and Disney's official,
they've gotten rid of a lot of people because of that.
Well, Marvel's official reasoning was, I think they mentioned the OnlyFans as like an also ran, but their initial thing was he was just difficult to work with, right?
That's a setup, bro.
That's fucking code, exactly. You know exactly. Yeah.
First of all, it's a difficult industry, period, right? As far as like whenever you're like working in creatives, you have so many different types of personalities and their creative expertise. So that is difficult even to get a product out, to get something that's you know, that's decent. So what I mean by that is that you're gonna have very you know, very you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of not hypersensitive, but just very artistic people, period. And they're very emotional and they're very this and they're very that, and there's nothing wrong with that. So there's already, if someone says something offhand or by accident, like a Bill Murray or this or that, oh, that person's difficult to do. I can't work with him. Kill the set. Kill him. Fire him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's obviously something like that, and that actually makes it worse, not better, from Disney's point of view. And on that note, Dragon's Blade 79 says for $5, kudos to Paulie, the Latino slant. Adwa, I'm jealous of the hat collection. Only have 5 myself.
Yeah, I got like dozens here. This is my baby right here.
Very nice.
Yeah, thanks, kudos. Thanks, Dragon's Blade, for the $5, and to all the midnighters out there. Boom.
Very nice. And ActionCom wonders, will the Civil War get a sequel?
Oh.
Well, it's the most it's the highest opener A24 has ever had, but it's also the biggest box office A24 has ever had. So I'd say that financially the door for that is still open. The bigger question is, does the story call for a sequel? Or is this, like every other A24 movies, a standard tale meant to tell one story and not intended to be part of a larger narrative? I would certainly imagine, based on the fact that this is that who is doing this, I don't think that there's any sequel setup here. Would be my speculation without having seen the movie.
Having seen the film, no, that would just be absolutely silly. You know, it cost $50 million to make. It's made about 25. It's got a haul as far as for it to start making money, but it is huge. This is big success for A24. I think Alex Garland, I think the next thing he's doing is the next 30 days is a zombie sequel or whatever it is with Cillian Murphy.
Oh, the 28 days thing.
The 28 days. Something like that lends itself
28 months or something, or 28.
Right.
Maybe it'll be 28 years later.
I think it is 28 years later, to be honest with you. No, I think you're right, because I think it is 20 some years since the original film. So I think they are doing it, because the first one was 28 days, then it was 28 weeks, and then they never did a month. So
but it lends, that's something like that lends itself. The Civil War, unless if they're very greedy and they see the money, then they go into like a prequel as to the whole, and they start defining what was undefinable, which I liked. I liked that Alex made it an open interpretation for the viewer, and he even said that in his interviews, and I think that's why it's brilliant. But I think you're gonna lose something if he goes greedy and it's like, all right, let's do a movie just about how did these states get together and then warring and all that stuff.
Yeah, indeed. But with that, we have actually caught up completely. We've had an amazing show today. Thank you all for being here and watching it. Thank you, Paulie, for joining in. Much appreciated. We also got a last-minute super chat here. Jason Webster says for $10 Australian. Andre, with the best films having recently been mostly foreign, Decision to Leave from 2022, for example, which place emphasis on compelling stories? Is Hollywood learning this lesson? Nope, they are not. Or that depends. That depends. Hollywood isn't one person. It is not one company. Hollywood is a collection of many, many different companies. And the ones that needed to learn that lesson, they're not going to learn it. And the ones that don't need to learn it, they never forgot it in the first place. They're still doing that. That's what you have like your smaller indie movies too, those that really generally need to make compelling original stories. A24, Say What You Want About Civil War, is an example of such a company that basically does what foreign movies are doing right now.
Yeah, and to add to that, Jason, I would say that it's already been happening. You'll see in the top 10 almost every weekend now a compelling story that breaks the top 10, whether it's from India, Asia, Latin America, the UK, those, or even the US. They do make it in there, and you got to understand too. Those films have such low costs that if they're in the top 10, that's a huge hit. It's a huge win, and that's a win for us. We want more of those films, more compelling stories. And Andre, I got to tell you, Sandra Hüller in 2 films last year, just she should have won the Best Actress with The Zone of Interest and Anatomy of a Fall. Anatomy of a Fall is probably my favorite film from last year, and it was in French and English. Fantastic film.
Yes, I know. That was. I heard great things about it. I haven't had the chance to see it myself yet, but I've heard amazing things about it.
Yeah, and someone asked for my Indiana Jones hat, so there you go.
That's more of a cowboy hat.
Well, it's a
Indy hat behind. It looks more like behind you, because he wears a fedora.
The black fedora? Yeah.
No, brownish. They're brown. That brown one right above your head there on the shelf.
Oh no, that's it's deceptive. It's pork pie.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. But I mean, that one over it would be I think your right shoulder there. That white one is closer to what Indy wears. Yeah.
It looks like it, but if I put it on, it's not.
Yeah.
I gotta lie. I gotta get an Indiana Jones fedora.
Yeah. Well, you know who to ask. Michael of Retro Blasting would know exactly which one you need. There you go.
Oh, okay. There you go.
He's a big indie fan. So with that, did we have anything else, Andre, we needed to cover? Or
no, we have nothing else we need to cover. Latino Slant is streaming later this evening. This
in about 40 minutes.
Redirect to there.
Oh, thank you. About 40 minutes, I'll be live. Thank you.
Then we got Toxic Femme later, where I will be premiering our brand new theme song and intro.
Ooh, I'm gonna play one of your songs that you sent me today on the Latino Slant.
Which one? I put it up on the. I put one of them up on the but I didn't put the rockier version up. But anyway,
Tom made some Latino themed spicy songs. Some would be offended, but here at the Latino Slant, we love it.
Very cool. All right, with that, everyone, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the channels and the X profiles of our esteemed guests, all of which you will find in the description. Check out Latino Slant later. Check out Toxic Femininity later still. And with that, it is time for some koalas in the rain.
Koalas in the rain. Koalas in the rain. No fucks given. Koalas in the rain.